My dad backed his fiance's plan to evict me. They tried to fight in court, but I turned the tables with proof. Now he begs me for forgiveness. Dad moves in soon-to-be bride, and she gets pregnant and demands I leave the house because she needs my room. I tell her, lady, I own the house. Sup, Reddit. My dad's gold-digging fiancé moved in with her 2 devil spawn. After she announced her pregnancy, she tried to kick me out of my own house. Her smirk disappeared when I told her I owned the place. What followed was an absolute show. Here's what went down. So, this whole saga started about 9 years ago when my mom died from cancer. I, 21 male, was 12. Dad was a wreck, and nobody knew what the hell to do with me. Luckily for everyone involved, my grandparents lived just outside the city on this decent chunk of land with a house that had seen better days, but still had good bones. After Mom passed, it just made sense for me to stay put with the grandparents. Dad would come home on weekends, holidays, whatever. The house itself is solid, 4 bedrooms, a couple of bathrooms, a big kitchen, sitting on about 3 acres of land that backs up to some woods. But here's where Dad started showing his true colors. Even as a kid, I noticed he had this thing about control. Everything had to be done his way, on his timeline, with his approval. He'd show up on weekends and immediately start rearranging things, telling Grandpa how to maintain the property properly, and making decisions about my life without asking anyone. My best friend Elio lived about 10 minutes down the road, so I wasn't completely isolated. Kid's been my ride or die since we were building forts in those backwoods. Here's where it gets interesting though. My mom was an only child. I'm an only child. When Grandma and Grandpa started declining a few years back, guess who's the only name on the will? That's right. Yours truly inherited the whole damn operation when Grandpa died. House, land, Grandpa's beat-to-hell pickup truck that somehow still runs, and a decent chunk of change they'd been sitting on. Dad used Mom's life insurance to renovate parts of the house over the years. But here's the thing. He acted like he was doing me some huge favor, like I should be grateful he was investing in the place. I found out about the inheritance when the lawyer called me after Grandpa's funeral. Dad was standing right there when I took that call. The look on his face when he realized I owned the house we were all living in. Not embarrassment or guilt, more like irritation, like I just complicated his life by existing. Elio was there that day, helping me sort through Grandpa's tools. When Dad walked away after that phone call, Elio just looked at me and said, "So you own the house now? Damn, Thanksgiving is going to be awkward." But we never discussed it. Dad just pretended it never happened and kept acting like he was the man of the house, making all the decisions, controlling everything from what we watched on TV to when I was allowed to have friends over. About 2 years after Mom died, Dad started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just random coffee dates and dinner meetups. Fast forward to about 6 months ago, and he drops this bomb. He's got a serious girlfriend, a 30-year-old preschool teacher named Samantha, who comes with 2 kids under 10 and enough emotional baggage to stock a therapy practice. Samantha's got this whole young professional mom aesthetic going on, drives a white SUV that's always spotless, wears those athleisure outfits, and has opinions about organic food that she'll share whether you ask or not. Her kids, Logan and Chloe, because of course their names sound like a country club membership roster, are these perfectly groomed little sociopaths. The first time Dad brought her to the house, she did this thing where she walked around taking mental notes like, this needs work and that needs replacing. I caught her opening cabinets and checking expiration dates on stuff in the pantry. Your grandmother had such interesting taste, she said, running her finger along the vintage wallpaper. It's so authentic, very lived in. The way she said lived in made it sound like a polite way of saying trashy, but Dad just ate it up. Samantha has such great design sense, he said, like she just complimented the Sistine Chapel. She's got so many ideas for improvements. Her kids were even worse than she was. Logan, who's maybe 8, spent the entire visit touching everything he wasn't supposed to touch while maintaining perfect eye contact. Chloe, the 6-year-old, accidentally knocked over Grandma's favorite plant, and then looked at me like it was my fault for putting it where she could reach it. When I mentioned the plant, Samantha just laughed. Oh, kids will be kids. They're just excited to be in such a big house. They're not used to having so much space to explore. Elio came by that evening and caught the tail end of their visit. After they left, he looked around the living room where Samantha had repositioned some of Grandma's throw pillows. Well, she seems fun, he said. Nothing says I'm definitely not planning to redecorate your entire life, like rearranging furniture on the first visit. But Dad was smitten, started spending more money on dates, bought new clothes, got his teeth whitened. Classic midlife crisis stuff, except instead of buying a motorcycle, he'd found himself a ready-made family that came with built-in validation. Samantha played it perfectly, asking his opinion on everything, deferring to his wisdom, letting him feel like the big strong provider. 3 months in, she's practically moved in. Her stuff starts showing up in Dad's bathroom. Her car is in the driveway more than it's at her apartment. Logan and Chloe have claimed the guest room like they're planning to stay forever. And the kids, Jesus Christ, the kids. They went from perfectly behaved little angels to absolute demons the second they got comfortable. Logan would accidentally break my stuff and then act confused when I got mad. Chloe would go through my room when I wasn't home and mess with my things, then deny everything when confronted. Whenever I complained, Samantha would give me this wounded look and suggest that maybe I wasn't used to having kids around. Dad naturally took her side every time, telling me they're just kids and to cut them some slack. By month 4, she wasn't even pretending anymore. She'd gone from grateful guest to woman of the house faster than you could say gold digger. It started small. Rearranging the living room furniture while Dad was at work, then acting like it had always been that way. Replacing Grandma's dish towels with her own organic cotton ones, throwing away food she didn't approve of, and replacing it with expensive organic alternatives. But the real power move was how she started treating me like I was some deadbeat nephew who'd overstayed his welcome. You know, I can rent it to you at a significant discount, way below market rate. When I asked how much of a discount, she explained that market rate for that area is about $1,500, but she'd only charge me $1,200. Really a steal, for someone in your situation. And what happens to this place? Well, Samantha's got great ideas for making it more functional for a growing family. The baby will need a nursery, and the kids need proper rooms. Your room would be the perfect nursery space. My room. The room I've lived in since I was 12. But wait. There's more. Samantha continued. My mother has agreed to move in temporarily to help with the baby. She'll need the guest room. I looked at Dad, waiting for him to say something. Anything? Nope. He was just sitting there, nodding along to everything she said. So I decided to play along to see how far they'd go. That's interesting. I'll think about it. Samantha's smile got a lot tighter. Great, but you know, waiting too long would be limiting everyone involved, so think fast. Okay. I texted Elio as soon as they went back to their room about needing an emergency drink run. He showed up 20 minutes later, took one look at my face. Dude, you look like someone just shat in your cereal. Tell me about it. I told him everything. Classic, he said. Nothing says family values like kicking the owner to make room for Grandma. 2 weeks after the pregnancy announcement, I came home from my afternoon classes to find Samantha in my room with cardboard boxes, packing up my stuff like I'd already agreed to move out. Not just standing in the doorway this time, actually in my room, going through my closet, wrapping up my mom's pictures in newspaper and boxing up books like she was preparing for a yard sale. When I asked what the heck she was doing, she looked up with this bright smile, like I just walked in on her organizing a charity drive. Hi sweetie, I'm just helping you get started with packing. Your father and I decided it would be better to get you moved sooner rather than later, so I thought I'd give you a head start. My father and I decided. Nobody asked me what I decided. She kept that sickeningly sweet tone. Well honey, you've had 2 weeks to think about it, and really, what's there to think about? This is obviously the best solution for everyone. She held up one of my mom's framed pictures like she was examining it for flaws. Besides, some of this stuff probably needs to be updated anyway. You can't hold on to childhood things forever. Put that down and get out of my room. Now. Now, she said in that condescending preschool teacher voice. There's no need to be unpleasant. I'm trying to help you transition to adult living. This is exciting. Your own place. Real independence. When I repeated my demand for her to get out, Samantha set down the picture and straightened up. For the first time since I'd met her, the mask completely dropped. Listen, little boy, she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I'm pregnant with your father's child. This house needs to work for a real family, not some overgrown teenager who can't handle the idea of growing up. You can either pack your stuff like an adult, or I can have your father explain to you why this isn't negotiable anymore. This isn't your house, you don't get to pack my stuff. Actually, she said, picking up another box and continuing like I hadn't spoken, your father and I have discussed this extensively. We've already paid the deposit on the apartment, and you're moving out this weekend. The movers come Monday to pick up your things. Movers. They'd hired movers for my stuff without asking me. When I said they couldn't do this, she told me they already did. The lease was signed, the deposit was paid. And frankly, you should be grateful we're handling all the logistics for you. Most parents would make their children figure this out on their own. That's when Dad walked in, and I could tell from his expression that he knew exactly what was happening. This wasn't Samantha going rogue. This was their plan. Dad, what the hell is this? We decided it's better to just rip the band-aid off. You've been dragging your feet on this decision, so we made it for you. You made it for me? Dad used that patronizing tone he'd perfected over the years. Look, this is happening whether you like it or not. You can either be mature about it and work with us, or you can throw a tantrum like a child. But either way, you're moving out this weekend. I looked between them. Dad standing there like he was delivering some tough love life lesson. Samantha smirking behind him like she just won the lottery. And they'd obviously planned this whole thing. When I asked what would happen if I refused, Dad's face went hard. Then they'd pack my stuff for me and put it in storage. I was an adult now, and it was time I started acting like one. This house was for families, not overgrown kids who couldn't handle change. Overgrown kids. My own father called me an overgrown kid for not wanting to be evicted from my own house. Samantha helpfully added that I had until Sunday. The cleaning lady needed time to prepare the room for the nursery furniture delivery. I pulled out my phone and started recording, asking them to say that again about moving me out of my house. Dad's face went red, and he told me to put that away. This is a family discussion, not some social media drama. I kept recording and asked him to clarify. They were evicting me from this house, the house that belongs to me. Samantha snapped that it belonged to this family, and families make decisions together. You don't get to hold everyone hostage because of some paperwork technicality. Paperwork technicality. Property ownership was a paperwork technicality. Dad, whose name is on the deed? Pure awkward silence while Dad realized he'd never actually checked the paperwork from when Grandpa died. When he finally admitted that legally, yes, the house was in my name, but started to say but, I cut him off. There was no but. Legally, this was my house, and he had just told me he was evicting me from my own property. That's when Samantha finally understood what was happening, and her face went through about 6 different emotions before settling on barely controlled panic. That can't be right, she said slowly. You're just a student. This student does. I showed her the phone screen. Inherited it from my grandparents when they died. House, land, everything. All mine. Samantha sat down hard on my bed, still holding one of my boxed-up books. But your father, he pays for everything. Utilities. Upkeep. Yeah. On my property. Like a tenant. He renovated this place with my mom's life insurance money to improve my house. The color drained from her face as she realized her entire plan had just imploded. So, when you decided to evict me from my own house and turn my bedroom into your nursery without asking, yeah, that's not going to fly. Dad was quiet for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice had that dangerous edge it got when he was really pissed off. Fine, he said. It's your house. But I was still 21 years old, and I was still his son, and I was still going to do what he told me to do. Actually, no, I wasn't. He said we'd see about that and walked out. Samantha stayed sitting on my bed, staring at the boxes of my stuff she'd been packing like they were evidence of a crime. She said this was insane. I couldn't just, this isn't how families work. You're right, families don't usually steal each other's houses. She looked up at me with pure hatred. You have no idea what you've just done. I am pregnant, and we need the house more than you do. Maybe you should have asked nicely. This isn't over. Good luck with that. I texted Elio immediately about deploying the nuclear option. They tried to pack my stuff without permission. His response came back in seconds, asking how they took the property ownership revelation. About as well as you'd expect, I told him. Dad's having an alpha male meltdown, and Samantha looks like she just watched her master plan burn to the ground. After the attempted forced eviction, I spent the weekend doing research, not homework. The kind of research that would help me figure out exactly how to make these people's lives as miserable as they tried to make mine. Elio came over Saturday morning with coffee and his laptop for what he called war council time. All right, what's the plan? I told him the plan. I was evicting them. Both of them. Even your dad? Especially my dad. He made his choice when he tried to force me out of my own house. Elio grinned. Ruthless. I like it. What do you need? We spent the morning researching tenant rights, eviction procedures, and property law. Turns out when you let people establish residency in your house, which Dad and Samantha had definitely done, getting them out requires proper legal channels. But when you own the property and they're not on any lease, you've got most of the power. Elio found the relevant laws. In this state, you need to give 30 days written notice for month-to-month tenants, but if they're not paying rent and there's no lease agreement, it's considered tenancy at will, and you can terminate it with notice. 30 days notice. But here was the fun part. If they refused to leave after notice, I could file for eviction and have them legally removed. When I asked about damages, like if they'd been living there rent-free, Elio found the beautiful part. I could sue for fair market rent for the entire time they'd been there without a lease, plus any damages to the property. I calculated quickly. Dad had been living there rent-free for 9 years. Samantha and her kids for about 6 months. At market rates for a 4-bedroom house in our area, we were talking about serious money. Dad would owe me about $200,000 in back rent. Samantha would owe about $15,000 just for the time she'd been there. Elio whistled. That's some expensive house playing. Monday morning, I went to the courthouse and filed the paperwork. Tuesday, I went to a lawyer to make sure I was doing everything by the book. Wednesday, I had the eviction notices printed up on official letterhead. Thursday evening, I waited for them both to be home, then called a family meeting in the living room. We need to talk, I said, setting the folder of legal documents on the coffee table. Dad was still in his post-superiority mode. If this is about your attitude problem, I don't want to hear it. You've been acting like a spoiled brat, and it needs to stop. Actually, this is about your housing situation. Samantha was sitting next to him, one hand on her belly like she was protecting the baby from my bad vibes. What about our housing situation? I opened the folder and pulled out the eviction notices. You're both being evicted. 30 days notice, effective immediately. The silence that followed was beautiful. Dad picked up his notice and read it like it was written in Sumerian. What the hell is this? It's an eviction notice. You have 30 days to find alternative housing and vacate the premises. He exploded. You can't do this. I'm your father. You little... Watch me. Samantha screamed. That's illegal. You can't kick out a pregnant woman. Actually, I can. But we don't pay rent, she said, like that was some kind of gotcha. Exactly. They were tenants at will, which meant they had even fewer rights than people with leases. Dad stood up and I could see that vein in his forehead that meant he was about to lose it completely. He called this the most ungrateful, disrespectful thing I'd ever done after everything he'd sacrificed for me. He went off about how he raised me, put money into this place, and had been taking care of everything. And now you can take care of your own housing, like every other adult on the planet. Samantha was reading through the notice again, and I could see the exact moment she found the part about back rent. She asked what this was about. Owed compensation for unlawful occupancy. That was the lawsuit I was filing for the rent they should have been paying this whole time. Fair market value for a 4-bedroom house, calculated monthly for the duration of their unauthorized residency. When Dad asked how much, I told him. For you about $200,000. For Samantha and her kids, $15,000 and counting. The color drained from both their faces. Samantha whispered, "You can't be serious." Dead serious. But I wasn't completely heartless. They could avoid the lawsuit by vacating within 30 days and signing an agreement not to pursue any claims against the property. Dad sat back down hard and asked, "About $200,000? That's what it costs to live in a house like this for 9 years. Who knew?" Samantha's voice got shrill, saying this was insane. They were going to be homeless, she was pregnant. Not my problem. You should have thought about that before you tried to steal my house. Dad was quiet for a long time, staring at the eviction notice like it might change if he looked at it hard enough. When he finally asked where they were supposed to go, I suggested anywhere but here. Samantha had that apartment, right? The one she was so eager to rent to me. That's a 1-bedroom, she said. We can't fit 3 adults and 2 kids in a 1-bedroom apartment. 3 adults? I asked her. My father and her mother, she explained. I laughed. Oh, she thought her mother was still invited to this party. That's adorable. Dad said he couldn't do this. He didn't have anywhere to go. All his money was tied up in this place. His money was tied up in my place. And now he knew how it felt to be told he had to leave. Samantha started crying. The angry, frustrated sobs of someone whose manipulation tactics weren't working anymore. She went on about how unfair this was, how they were building a life together and were going to be a family. But the baby, she wailed. The baby she got pregnant with to lock down my dad. That baby. Her crying stopped instantly, and the look she gave me was pure hatred. You don't know what you're talking about. Really? Let me guess. Birth control failure. Happy accident. Surprise pregnancy that just happened to occur right when you needed to cement your position in the house. Silence. Ian showed up the next morning with donuts and a shit-eating grin, asking how they took their eviction notices. Like you'd expect, I told him. Lots of crying, threats and disbelief that actions have consequences. Your dad too? He asked. My dad's having an existential crisis about owing me $200,000 in back rent. Beautiful, he said. Justice is a dish best served with legal paperwork. The next month was magnificent to watch. Dad tried everything. Lawyer consultations he couldn't afford to fight, emotional manipulation about being my father and this being our family home, and even attempted bribes about signing the house over to me officially and calling it even. Newsflash, I already owned the house. Signing it over to me would be like giving me my own birthday present. Samantha went full scorched earth, called my university to complain about my unstable home environment, called the police to report a domestic disturbance when I asked her to move her car. Even tried to call CPS on herself, claiming I was creating an unsafe environment for children, which backfired when they pointed out that maybe she shouldn't have her kids living somewhere she felt unsafe. Finding housing for an unemployed pregnant woman, her 2 kids, a 52-year-old man with mediocre credit, and potentially a grandmother, all on Dad's construction salary, turned out to be harder than they thought. Week 4, Dad suggested, maybe they could work out some kind of arrangement. He could pay me rent to stay. Market rate, they could make it official. I said no. He started to argue, but I cut him off. Nope. You had the chance to treat me with respect and have a conversation like an adult. Instead you tried to force me out of my own house. Actions have consequences. But I'm your father, he said. Yeah. And you're also the guy who tried to evict me from my own property to make room for your girlfriend's mother. Father of the Year material right there. That's when the real fireworks started. Samantha filed a complaint claiming I was evicting her because of her pregnancy status. The hearing was beautiful. Samantha had to explain that she was Dad's girlfriend, had been living there 6 months, had no lease, and paid 0 rent. Then I got to tell the judge how they'd tried to force me out of my own house and convert my bedroom into a nursery without my permission. The judge basically told her, you can't claim pregnancy discrimination when you're being evicted for trying to illegally evict the actual property owner. Case dismissed. But the real bomb came during week 5, and you're not going to believe what happened. I was at Elio's place when Dad called, and his voice sounded weird, shaky. We need to talk, he said. About what? You've got 3 days left to move out. About the baby. Something in his tone made me pay attention. What about it? Can you come home? I need to show you something. I found Dad sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers in front of him. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past month. He slid a paper across the table. Paternity test results. The baby isn't mine, he said quietly. I stared at the paper. What do you mean? Samantha had been lying this whole time. How did he find out? She'd wanted him to sign up for better health insurance at work to cover the pregnancy. The insurance company required blood work for pre-existing conditions. They ran some genetic screening panels. Turns out he couldn't be the father. Wrong blood type. So, whose baby was it? Her ex-husband's. Apparently they were still sleeping together when she started dating Dad. The whole thing was a setup. Where was she now? Upstairs. He'd confronted her this morning. She tried to claim the test was wrong, that maybe it was a mix-up at the lab. Then she tried to say it didn't matter because he'd be a better father than her ex anyway. When that didn't work, she said he was abandoning her and the baby, and how could he be so cruel to throw out a pregnant woman? He told her she had until tonight to get out, or he'd call the police and report her for fraud. She called him a heartless bastard and said this was all my fault for being a selfish little who couldn't handle having a real family. I almost laughed. Even caught red-handed lying about paternity, she was still blaming me. So what happens now? I asked. Dad was quiet for a long time. I screwed up bad. I chose a woman I barely knew over my own son. I tried to kick you out of your own house for someone who was lying to me from day one. Yeah, you did. I know you probably hate me right now, and you have every right to, but I'm hoping maybe we could work something out. I don't have anywhere to go, and I know I don't deserve any help from you, but no. The word hung in the air between us. You made your choice. You chose her over me. You tried to force me out of my own house. You called me ungrateful and disrespectful for not wanting to be homeless. You don't get to come crawling back now that your gold-digging girlfriend turned out to be exactly what everyone except you could see she was. But I'm your father. I'm your... Yeah. And I'm your son. Didn't stop you from trying to evict me. Dad looked down at the paternity test results and said he knew he messed up. He knew he didn't deserve forgiveness, but he was asking anyway. I told Dad if he really wanted to know what I thought. He nodded. I think you're a 52-year-old man who got manipulated by a 30-year-old con artist because you were thinking with your dick instead of your brain. I think you were so desperate to feel young and needed that you ignored every red flag she threw up. And I think when push came to shove, you chose her over your own son, and now that it's all blown up in your face, you want me to forget that you tried to steal my inheritance and kick me out of my own house. He flinched like I'd slapped him. It wasn't like that, he started to say, but I cut him off. It was exactly like that. You just got caught. Dad was quiet for a long time. So what happens now? He asked. Now you move out, as we agreed. That night, Samantha left. No big scene, no dramatic goodbye. Just packed her stuff and disappeared with her kids. Dad moved out 2 days later, rented a one-bedroom apartment across town, and took only his personal stuff. Left behind all the furniture he'd bought, all the improvements he'd made, everything he'd invested in the house that was never his. Elio came over the day after Dad left, bringing drinks and pizza. He asked, "You'll ever forgive him?" Maybe, but not today. And not because he got caught being an idiot. Fair enough, he said. So, what's the plan now? Finish school, enjoy living in my own house without anyone trying to steal it. Maybe get a dog. I was my sister's ATM for 5 years. When I said no more, she screamed, "Go to hell," and threw cake at my face. Now she owes me $39,000 with interest. For the past 5 years, I, a 32-year-old male, have essentially served as my 29-year-old sister's personal bank account. I will call her Lila. I don't mean, "Hey, can I borrow $20 for gas?" kind of circumstance. I'm talking about full-fledged financial assistance, rent, utilities, groceries, clothes for her children, school supplies, and everything. I work in a facility that produces car parts. It's not glamorous, but it pays well if you're willing to work a lot of overtime, which I've been doing almost non-stop since Lila's husband left her. My social life. What a social life. I haven't had a proper vacation since 2019. Most weekends, I work extra shifts or assist Lila with a broken item in her apartment. It was not always like this. Lila used to be married to this guy named Travis. He was fine. He had a regular job as an electrician. They seemed fairly regular, and they had a child together, my niece Chloe, who is now 7 years old, and actually quite cool. But Lila has always had rage issues. Like she'll appear okay, and then snap over nothing. She'd throw enormous tantrums and shout at Travis over little matters like him buying the wrong brand of cereal, or not responding to her texts quickly enough. It's no wonder that Dad got fed up and left when Chloe was approximately 2. I can recall Lila calling me at 11 p.m., sobbing about Travis being a selfish guy who abandoned his family. I subsequently discovered he had been telling her for months that he was unhappy, but she didn't take him seriously, I guess. Anyway, after the divorce, Lila could no longer afford her flat. Her work at the mall paid little, and childcare charges are exorbitant. This is where my parents, Richard and Margaret, should have intervened, correct? But no, they've been living the retirement dream ever since Dad received his pension. They travel about 4 months out of the year and have refurbished their home with one of those expensive kitchens from TV. When I proposed that they should financially assist Lila, their daughter, Mom looked at me with a patronizing smile and said, "You're young and capable, Finn. You don't have any responsibilities yet. Lila needs help right now." So, like an idiot, I agreed to help Lila temporarily while she recovered. That was in 2020. It is currently 2025. And guess what? I'm still assisting. At first, it was simply assisting with rent. Then there was rent and utilities, as electricity is extremely expensive in the winter. Then there were groceries, because Chloe is developing and requires nutritious food. Then there were clothes for Chloe, school supplies, after-school activities, and a new laptop because she needed one for school. She was a first grader. New furniture since the old stuff makes me think of Travis. And on, and on. Every time I suggested that we cut back on certain spending, Lila would pull one of her famous moves. Sometimes she'd start crying about how difficult it is to be a single mother. Or she'd become really defensive and declare, "I'm being cheap." Her preferred strategy was to use Chloe as a shield. "So you want your niece to go without basic necessities?" she would ask, reminding me how fortunate I was not to have a family to maintain. Here's the thing with me. I've always been the family fixer. Middle child syndrome, perhaps. When things get uncomfortable, I start making jokes. I attempt to keep the peace. I dislike conflict. When I hand over money to Lila that I know I'll never see again, I just make a snarky remark like, "Well, there goes my dream yacht." Or guess I'll just have to win the lottery now. Everyone laughs, the matter is resolved, but I am still broke. I truly had a dream once. I was saving for a down payment on a home. Lila had approximately $15,000 saved up when her life crashed. That money was spent within the first year of assisting her. I intended to attend some community college programs in order to advance in my career or obtain a better position. Cannot afford it right now. I've even tried dating on occasion, but it's difficult to go out with someone when you're counting pennies after paying 2 sets of bills. Jordan, my pal, is constantly reminding me that I'm being used. Dude, she's a grown woman, she should figure it out like everyone else. However, when children are involved, things are not so straightforward. Chloe did not ask for any of this. And I adore that little kid. She's smart and humorous, and she likes to draw dinosaurs wearing hats. How can you say no when you know your niece will suffer? Uncle Henry is the only member of my family who can see through Lila's act. He drew me aside at Thanksgiving last year and said, "Kid, you're setting yourself on fire to keep someone warm who's just going to complain it's not hot enough." Henry has always been direct like that. He offered to loan me money once, but I declined. This problem is already hard enough without including more family members in the financial picture. Lila finally found a good job as an administrative assistant at an insurance company, full-time and with benefits, about 8 months ago. I hoped things would finally change. Maybe I could just help with Chloe's expenses or pay a portion of the rent instead of the entire amount. However, the financial obligations continued, often much more so than before, because changing jobs is expensive in various ways. She required a professional wardrobe and networking lunches, among other things, which sounded uncomfortably similar to, "I want to buy new clothes and go out to eat." Meanwhile, I'm still driving my 2008 Honda with 187,000 miles on it, going to discount grocery stores and using my phone until it practically dies because I can't afford a replacement. But I kept paying. Because I'm a sucker, I suppose. Because it feels impossible to say no after saying yes so many times. Because I'm worried about what will happen to Chloe if I cut Lila off. Because my entire identity in the family is the dependable Finn, who solves everyone's issues with a smile and a joke. But after Lila acquired her new office job, I started seeing strange things. Not all at once, but in small increments that simply did not add up. First and foremost, her financial situation deteriorated, rather than improved. When she was working part-time at the mall, I could understand why she needed assistance. But now she is making money. Not fantastic, but certainly better than before. And she's still asking me for money, sometimes even more. One week she called and said she couldn't pay her rent because she had to pay for Chloe's school pictures. School photos cost about $50, but her rent is $1,200. Make sure it makes sense. When I went over to her flat, I started seeing new things. Nothing fancy, but definitely not a bargain. New throw pillows and brand-name makeup on her bathroom counter. She even got one of those robotic vacuums. Who would buy a robot vacuum if they couldn't pay their electricity bill? The big red flag was when she arrived at my folks' house for Sunday dinner wearing these fancy shoes. I only recognized the brand because the person I was dating was infatuated with it. They cost a minimum of $300. When I cocked an eyebrow at her, she simply shrugged and claimed they were on sale. On sale for $250 rather than $300. That's still crazy when I'm over here buying work boots at Walmart. Then she started acting strangely about her phone. She used to just leave it on the table or something, but now she's carrying it everywhere, including the restroom, and she jumps anytime it alerts her with a notice. I once went in when she was texting and she practically flipped her phone over as if she was hiding nuclear codes or something. Her routine also became weird. Previously, she would spend the evenings at home with Chloe, but she started asking me to babysit more and more. Typically last minute. Emergency work thing, she'd explain, or girls' night. I really need this for my mental health. Now, I understand the necessity for social time, especially as a single mom. But it was happening about 2 to 3 times every week. I saw Chloe expressing things that didn't make sense given Lila's story of being a broke single mom. One day, I was picking her up from school, and she told me about this wonderful restaurant with a table where they cook in front of you. It's obviously a hibachi place. When I asked who took her there, she replied, "Mommy took me last week." So I'm sitting there thinking, I gave Lila money for groceries last week since she mentioned they were eating ramen every night. However, she was able to afford hibachi. That's about $60 to $70 for 2 people, easily. Another time, Chloe was playing with my phone and unintentionally launched my Amazon app. She saw a toy and replied, "I have that. Mommy ordered it for my good grades." The toy cost $40. Not the most costly item ever, but certainly not what someone who cannot pay their water bill should purchase. I began paying greater attention to Lila's social media accounts. She wasn't posting anything suspicious directly, but she was identifying herself in locations like fine restaurants, wineries, and performance venues. She was always with a bunch of work pals she hadn't mentioned previously. When I casually mentioned one of these outings, "Hey, how was that Italian place you went to Tuesday?" she became defensive right away. "Are you stalking my Instagram now? Wow, Finn, controlling much." I backed away because it is what I do. Make a joke, smooth things over and pretend everything is alright. Just making conversation, sis. Glad you're making friends at your new job. But I began to wonder where my money was going. If she can afford girls' nights, hibachi and high-end shoes, why can't she pay rent? Something was not adding up. Uncle Henry also observed. We were helping my father repair his deck. Well, Henry and I were working as Dad observed when Henry just asked me, "You still bankrolling Lila's life?" I gave him a non-answer like, "You know how it is. Family helps family." Henry just shook his head. "That girl's taking you for a ride, Finn. You don't see it because you don't want to, but everyone else does." That ached because deep down I knew he was correct. Even my friend Jordan had stopped asking me to go out because he was tired of hearing I can't afford it while seeing me Venmo hundreds of dollars to my sister. I tried discussing it with my parents once. We were at their house for Dad's birthday, and Lila had just begged me for money to fix her car the day before, an $800 repair that I'm pretty sure was fabricated. "Don't you think it's strange that Lila still needs so much help despite her new job?" I asked Mom while we were alone in the kitchen. Mom just gave me that look, like I'm being difficult. "She's a single mother, Finn. Do you have any idea how expensive it is to raise a child? You're lucky you only have to worry about yourself." There it was again. I'm lucky to be trapped paying for 2 families on one paycheck when everyone else may live their lives. When Lila began receiving deliveries, I became very suspicious. I knew because Chloe mentioned it. "The delivery man comes to our house a lot now. Mommy says it's because she deserves nice things." Goodness. While I'm over here contemplating whether I can afford to repair my car's air conditioner or if I should just sweat through another summer, I still didn't know what was going on. Part of me wondered if she had a shopping addiction or was in some sort of problem she wasn't telling me about. In any case, I resolved to discover the truth. The following time she asked me to babysit last minute for a work event, I consented as usual. I didn't intend to spy through my sister's belongings that day. I'm not that type of person. But when I arrived to babysit Chloe, strange things were happening on. First, Lila was completely dressed up for a work event on a Thursday night. She was dressed in a tight black dress that I'd never seen before, had fancy makeup and hair done, and was wearing perfume that clearly cost more than the body spray she used to buy at the mall. When I asked about it, she became really defensive. "Some of us care about our appearance, Finn. Not everyone wants to look like they just rolled out of bed." For the record, I was wearing regular jeans and a clean t-shirt. Not quite just rolled out of bed, but whatever. The second strange thing was that Chloe appeared perplexed about where her mother was going. When Lila remarked, "Mommy has to go to a work thing," Chloe replied, "Is Mason going to be there?" Lila's face went white almost instantly. She yelled at Chloe, "Go brush your teeth right now," and nearly shoved me into the kitchen, stating we needed to talk about Chloe's bedtime ritual. Now I am not stupid. "Who's Mason?" I inquired. "Just a coworker," she replied hastily. "We're all going to this team building thing." She lied. I've known Lila my entire life, and she has this habit of touching her earring while lying. She was virtually ripping on her earring by this point, but I let it go since Chloe returned to the room, and I didn't want to start a fight in front of her. Lila went quickly, asking me not to wait because these work things can go late. After I settled Chloe into a movie, I decided to look around a little. Not full-fledged snooping, just observation. I was not opening drawers or anything. When I went to put away Chloe's sweater, I noticed a men's jacket hanging in the hall closet. Not like a unisex jacket, but a standard men's leather jacket in size extra large. Travis, Lila's ex, was best described as a medium. In the restroom I noticed men's body wash in the shower, not the cheap type either. The premium sort, which costs around $15 each bottle. There was also a men's razor on the countertop. However, the true proof was in the living room. While Chloe was putting on her jammies, I saw some mail on the coffee table. One envelope was addressed to Mason Jennings, the same address as Lila's flat. This guy was receiving mail at her residence. That is not a casual thing. That is not a co-worker. That's someone who spends a lot of time there. When Chloe returned for the movie, I casually said, "Hey Pops, who's Mason again? Is he one of Mommy's friends from work?" She gave me that adults are so dumb look that only kids can pull off. "No, Uncle Finn, Mason is Mommy's boyfriend. He sleeps over lots of times and makes pancakes in the morning." Okay, there it was. My sister had a hidden boyfriend who allegedly spent enough time at her house to receive mail and prepare breakfast. "Does Mason buy you things?" I inquired, attempting to sound casual. "Sometimes," she responded, concentrating on selecting a movie. "He got me the robot that cleans the floor, and he took me and Mommy to the restaurant where they cook in front of you. He has a cool car too." So this guy was purchasing gifts for my niece, taking them to expensive places, and allegedly driving a cool car, while I was still paying Lila's rent and utilities because she couldn't afford them. I felt sick to my stomach. For 5 years, I'd been sacrificing everything to support Lila, thinking she was struggling, and now she had a man who was spending money on her and Chloe while I was still paying the bills. The more Chloe talked, the worse things got. Mason had reportedly been around for at least 6 months. He took them to the zoo after Lila informed me that she couldn't afford Chloe's field trip. He even took them on a weekend excursion to a water park, the same weekend Lila informed me she needed additional money because her hours were reduced. I maintained my composure in front of Chloe. We watched the movie, I told her a tale, and I tucked her down as if everything was fine. But internally, I was angry. After Chloe fell asleep, I examined around more carefully. In Lila's room, I discovered shopping bags in her closet with receipts for luxury clothes, and even an iPad. All acquired within the last few months while I was eating ramen for dinner to save money. In her nightstand drawer, there were weekend vacation brochures and a handwritten note that read, "Happy 6 months, babe. Can't wait for many more. Love, R." 6 months. She'd been dating this guy for half a year and was still receiving my money. I grabbed my phone and began photographing everything. The men's items in the bathroom, the mail, the shopping receipts, and the card. I even took a photo of the dude's jacket. I sought evidence when she tried to deny everything. Then I looked over her Instagram. She wasn't posting images with any guys, but when I looked closely at her girls' night out shots, I noticed the same guy in the background of numerous of them, not labeled, but clearly present. In one photograph, you can see his hand on her waist. Subtle, sis. Very subtle. I was still sitting there looking through her social media when I heard her key enter the door at about midnight. I immediately put everything back where I found it and attempted to appear relaxed on the couch. She came in still dressed up, little tipsy, and shocked to see me awake. "Oh, you're still here. How was Chloe?" "Great," I answered, my tone bland. "We had a nice talk. She told me all about Mason." The expression on her face was nearly worth the thousands of dollars I had squandered on her. Then she moved from denying everything, "He's just a friend," to downplaying it. "We've only been dating a few weeks," to ultimately admitting they had been together for almost 6 months. But the worst thing was when she tried to explain keeping him hidden from me. "You're so judgmental, Finn. I knew you'd make a big deal out of it." "A big deal? You've been taking my money for emergencies while spending it on dates with this guy." "It's not like that. Mason's going through a tough time financially right now. I've been helping him out sometimes." That's when I totally lost it. "So, let me get this straight," I responded, attempting to remain calm. "I work overtime every week so you can pay your bills, but instead you're using that money to support some grown man who should be supporting himself." She burst into tears then. Classic Lila move. When logic fails, activate the waterworks. She went on about how I didn't understand, how Mason was wonderful with Chloe, how she was happy for the first time since Travis left, and how dare I attempt to ruin it for her. I told her I was finished. There's no more money, no more bailouts, no longer being her personal ATM. She was capable of paying her own bills, just like any other adult on the earth. Of course, she called me every name in the book, Selfish, uncaring, and jealous because I didn't have anyone. That last one stung because it may have been true. It's difficult to date when you're continuously working and broke from helping your sister. I left her place that night, assuming it was the end. Boy, was I mistaken. The next morning, my parents called. Guess who contacted them at 1 a.m., weeping about how mean I was. They lectured me on the need of family support and how ridiculous I was. When I tried to explain Mason, they brushed it aside as if it were nothing. So she has a boyfriend. What's the big deal? She deserves some happiness after everything she's been through. Did everyone forget that I've been through a lot too? That I had put my entire life on hold for 5 years? For the next week, Lila continued texting me about invoices that were due. I disregarded them all. My parents called repeatedly, leaving guilt-ridden voicemails about how Chloe shouldn't suffer because I was stubborn. I also ignored those. I was finally standing my ground, which felt great. Then came Saturday. I was at home washing laundry when the doorbell rang. It was Lila, with a fancy-looking cake box. "Can I come in?" she inquired, appearing regretful for once. Against my better judgment, I allowed her in. She placed the cake on my kitchen table and began giving an obviously scripted speech about how sorry she was for not telling me about Mason and how she understood why I was unhappy. But couldn't we figure things out? Maybe I could still contribute with the rent while she sorted things out. I looked at her in bewilderment. "You still don't get it, do you? This isn't just about your boyfriend. It's about the lying, the manipulating, using me for 5 years while hiding how you were really spending the money." "That's not fair," she responded, becoming defensive again. "I did need help with necessities. Sure, not with fancy date nights and gifts for your boyfriend. Do you have any idea what I've given up for you? I've been living like I'm broke because I am broke after giving you all my money." "It wasn't all of your money," she murmured. "Don't exaggerate." I laughed, really laughed. "Lila, I've given you over $35,000 in the past 5 years. I calculated it." Her eyes bulged. I do not think she had ever done the math. "Look, I told you, I'm not even asking for the money back. It's gone, but I'm done. You have a job, you have a boyfriend. Figure it out between the two of you." That was when she pointed to the cake box. "I got your favorite carrot cake from that bakery you like as a peace offering." When I opened the box, there was indeed a lovely carrot cake inside. But something about it felt odd. "What's this really for?" I inquired. "You've never brought me cake as an apology before." She fidgeted with her earrings. "Just wanted to make things right." I saw some writing on the cake, which was partially visible under the box top. I opened it fully to see. "Happy 6-month anniversary, R." The rest was smudged. It clicked right away. "This is for Mason, isn't it? Today is your 6-month anniversary with him." Her face turned crimson. "Well, yes, but I thought we could share it. I'm trying to include you in my life." "Include me?" I asked, my voice growing louder. "You didn't even buy this for me. You bought it for your anniversary, and what, he canceled so you thought you'd use it to butter me up instead." "Mason didn't cancel," she yelled. "He's meeting me later. I just thought. You thought you'd smooth things over with me so I'd keep paying your bills, then go celebrate with him using my favorite cake that I'm guessing you paid for with money I gave you for your electric bill last month." "It's not like that," she cried. "God, you're impossible. This is why I didn't tell you about him. You're so judgmental and controlling." "Controlling? I've let you walk all over me for 5 years. I'm not trying to control you. I'm just done being used by you." "Fine," she exclaimed. "Keep being a bitter, lonely loser jerk. Mason loves me, which is more than anyone can say about you." That hurt more than I cared to admit. "If Mason loves you so much," I replied with a grimace, "then congratulations. You finally found someone else to be your ATM, though I'm guessing he doesn't know that's his role yet. Maybe check if his credit score can handle the Lila attacks before you get too attached." Her face distorted with wrath, and before I could respond, she snatched the cake and smashed it right in my face. Carrot cake got everywhere, in my eyes, up my nose, down my shirt. The hefty cake plate struck me hard enough to cut my lip. "Go to hell, Finn," she exclaimed. "You think you're so much better than everyone. At least Mason isn't a pathetic loser who has no life outside of work." I stood there in awe, icing streaming down my cheeks. I was 29 years old, and my sister was flinging cake at me like a baby having a temper tantrum. She grabbed her purse and raced toward the door before turning back. Don't expect to see Chloe again if this is how you're going to be. The threat to use my niece as a weapon was the final straw. Get out, I murmured calmly, despite the cake on my face. And don't come back until you're ready to act like an adult. After she went, I stood in my kitchen, cake dripping on the floor, wondering how my life had come to this. After 5 years of sacrifice, all I got was a cake to the face and a threat to prevent me from seeing my niece. I took a shower, washed the frosting off my ears and hair, and made a decision. This was not over. If Lila wanted to play nasty, I could too. My phone started filling up with text messages from my folks. Apparently Lila had already contacted them with her version of events, in which I was cruel and unreasonable, and she was the victim again. This time, I did not ignore them. I snapped a picture of my still red face with the cut on my lip, and sent it to the family group chat with the following message. This is what your daughter did when I said I wouldn't pay her expenses anymore. Do you still think I am the problem? Dad's response. You know how emotional she can get. You should not have pressed her buttons. Classic. Lila acts like a lunatic, and it's my responsibility for pushing her buttons by refusing to pay her expenses any longer. I tried to explain about the boyfriend again, how she had been lying for months, and about the shopping sprees, restaurants, and excursions. Their response was basically, well, that's between her and her boyfriend. Number. It's between her, her boyfriend and me, the guy who's been funding it all. Uncle Henry was the only one who was on my side. He called. Are you pressing charges? Was his first question. I wasn't, obviously. She's still my sister, and Chloe would be traumatized if her mother were arrested. But the fact that someone finally admitted how bad the situation was meant a lot. Meanwhile, Lila had launched a full-scale public relations campaign against me. She was telling everyone who would listen that I had abandoned her and Chloe because I was envious of their love. She even made some weird comments on Facebook about toxic family members and finding out who really loves you. I could have simply walked away at this point, cut communication, nursed my wounds, and attempted to restore my savings. But something about me had changed. I had had enough of being the kind person who takes the hit for everyone else. Uncle Henry and I met for lunch a few days later. We were just finishing our burgers when he gave me a serious look. Have you thought about what you're going to do next? Because your sister isn't just going to let this go. I shrugged. What can I do? The money's gone. Henry smirked. Maybe not. My buddy Alex works at a debt collection agency. The legit kind, not the scammy ones. You got records of all the money you gave her? Every penny, I replied. I've been tracking it in a spreadsheet for years. 3 days later I was sitting across from Alex, sliding a folder full of statements, Venmo receipts, and text screenshots across his desk. So your sister asked for money for rent emergencies while buying $300 shoes, he inquired, thumbing over the proof. And taking secret boyfriends to fancy restaurants, I mentioned. And you have texts where she explicitly acknowledges these were loans? I pointed to the highlighted part. Lila. I swear I'll pay you back when I get on my feet. Me. You said that last month. Lila. I mean it this time. Perfect, he replied. I can work with this. I walked out of his office with a bounce in my step for the first time in weeks. The official notification was delivered to Lila's flat 2 days later. Total owed, $39,423.27 plus reasonable interest. Payment is needed immediately. Failure to answer might result in credit reporting, possible wage garnishment, and other legal action. My phone rang around 18 minutes later. Are you freaking serious right now? Lila's voice was so harsh that I had to move the phone away from my ear. Hello to you too, sis. You sent a debt collector after me? Well, I said with a smile. You know what they say, when someone throws cake in your face, send a professional to collect what they owe you, or something like that. This isn't funny, they're threatening my credit score, that is serious. Maybe you could ask Mom and Dad for help. Or Mason, he seems to enjoy funding your lifestyle. Though I guess he thought he was dating an independent woman, not someone who's been mooching off her brother for 5 years. The yelling that ensued was remarkable. I waited approximately 30 seconds before interrupting. Look, it's simple. You borrowed money, you didn't repay it. Now you have a debt. Welcome to adulthood, Lila. Those weren't loans, they were family helping family. Funny, I have about 50 texts that say otherwise. She hung up. I laughed and shut my phone, knowing that the family nuclear meltdown was about to occur. It did not disappoint. Mom and Dad made 17 calls in the next hour. I finally responded while making myself a meal. Have you completely lost your mind? Dad exclaimed without hesitation. Hi Dad, I'm doing well, thanks for asking. A debt collector against your own sister? Since she's allergic to personal responsibility, I thought I'd introduce her to professional responsibility. Mom cut in. Finn, you need to call this off immediately. Lila is absolutely distraught. So was I when she smashed cake in my face, and when she spent the money I gave her for rent on her secret boyfriend. But please, tell me more about how I'm the bad guy here. This isn't who we raised you to be, Dad remarked sadly. You raised me to be a doormat? Weird. I must have missed that lesson. The conversation then deteriorated. They alternated between guilt, threats, and pleas to familial loyalty. You know what's really funny, I ended by stating, I'm the only one who's ever held Lila accountable for anything. Maybe if you'd done that years ago, we wouldn't be here. They hung up on me. Progress. Alex called the following day. Your sister and her boyfriend came in, he remarked, amused. Quite the performance, I bet. Let me guess, tears, screaming, threats to call the police? All of the above, but the boyfriend pulled me aside and asked how much it would take to make this go away immediately. I almost dropped my phone. Seriously? He seemed very concerned about her credit score, almost like he was planning something that required good credit. I told him a significant good faith payment would show seriousness, and he wrote a check for $5,000 on the spot. I burst into laughter. You what? Yep. And they signed a payment plan for the rest. $500 a month until it's paid off. Congratulations, you'll be getting about $350 a month after our fee. I hung up and performed a victory dance in my living room. The best investment in a debt collector ever. Lila's social media accounts became oddly silent after that. No more posts about toxic families. No more victim narratives. Just radio silence. The first payment came into my account the next week. I quickly used it to fix my car's air conditioner, which had been broken for 2 summers. The following month, I paid off one of my credit cards. The month after that, I opened a savings account. My parents continued to give me the cold shoulder, certain that I had committed some unforgivable transgression against the precious institution of family. Uncle Henry found it hilarious. They'll come around, he told us during our fishing trip. Or they won't. Either way, you're not bankrupt anymore. What is the best part? For the first time in 5 years, I can buy decent coffee at the grocery store without worrying about how many of Lila's expenses the money will cover. Freedom tastes like a quality dark roast, which is excellent. Since several people have asked, yes, the debt collector way is legal if you have adequate paperwork showing the money was a loan, not a gift. Text messages in which someone acknowledges that it is a loan and agrees to repay you are legally binding in most places. Do your research and save your receipts. My brother mocked my small wedding. Then he Googled my fiancé's name and found out he was the builder of luxury resorts across the Middle East. It all began when I joyfully arrived to the family house with the invitations. It was nothing spectacular, yet we made it with love. My mother stared at it like if I'd given her a pizza flyer. Are you serious? A hole this simple? She threw the invitation on the table as if it repulsed her. Oh, what a shame. My brother grabbed it and presented it to his girlfriend while holding back laughs. Look, my sister is having her grand wedding here. Isn't it picturesque? His girlfriend covered her lips, faking sympathy. Oh no, how sad. My father did not even turn around. Don't count on me, I'm not going to make a fool of myself. But Dad. No buts. That's not a wedding, it's a neighborhood block party. Just then, my aunt strolled in, as if the cosmos needed another round of ridicule. What are you talking about? About the girl's little wedding, my mother muttered contemptuously, as if the term wedding bothered her. Oh yes, my friend already told me. She says it's such a pity she settled for so little. My brother gave a loud laugh. They're going to think we've run out of money or something worse. Deep down, I knew this would happen. I wasn't expecting a standing ovation, but hearing it from their own mouths, so raw and unfiltered, was like getting slapped in slow motion. Something shattered or hardened inside of me as I placed the crumpled invitation away. They would see who had the most horrible wedding. I did not sleep that night. My family's words played like a music. But it wasn't only the words spoken that afternoon. It was an echo, the closing lyric of a harsh opera that I had grown up listening to. Sitting in the darkness of the kitchen, the humiliation of the offer faded into a carousel of bad memories. I was 19 when I introduced them to my first boyfriend, a genuinely nice guy who worked as a mechanic to pay for his studies. I recall my mother's frozen expression and her later private remark. "Darling, love is nice, but it doesn't pay the bills at the garage. Aim higher." When I told my father at 23 that I was quitting the law degree he had picked for me to pursue my passion for graphic design, he didn't even look at me. "So much investment in your education for you to end up making little drawings. What a disappointment." And the continual comparison to my brother, whose advances at a marketing firm were celebrated with lavish dinners, and his new cars were a source of family pride. When I sold my first piece to an independent gallery, my brother remarked at Christmas dinner, "Well, at least it pays the rent." There are levels to everything, right? A term he had used just a few days before. It was always the same. Money was the measure of worth, status trumped affection, and appearances over happiness. This was not about the wedding, it never was. It was about me, choosing a path they couldn't brag about in their social circle. The kitchen clock chimed 3 a.m. The weight of a lifetime of slights sat on my chest. It was then that I informed my fiancé everything, including the invitation. I told him everything about my mechanic boyfriend, my career and my brother, including the pauses. "My father said you would leave me in ruins," I informed him, my voice cracking. I noticed his jaw stiffen. "That's not the worst part," I said. "My sister already told the whole family they're not coming, so no one gets their hopes up." He remained silent for a long time after saying those words. Then he held my hands with a calmness that shocked me. "I have something to confess to you." A shiver went down my spine. "What do you mean?" "My father doesn't just sell furniture. That's his hobby, a small side business. He actually owns a real estate development company that builds luxury resorts and hotels all over the world. We've been working with international investors for years, but he always told me to keep that private here. People will treat you differently if they know you have money," he'd tell me. I was speechless. "Are you kidding me?" "Not at all. And my mom isn't a housewife. She's an architect with contacts all over the world." He ran his hands through his hair. "When I tell them what your family did to you, they want a money show. We'll give them the show of their lives." The next day, we visited his parents' house. They had always treated me like a daughter, but when I told them what had happened, I noticed something different in their eyes, something more protective and intimate. "I can't believe they said such things to you. Anyone who messes with the woman my son loves, messes with us," my father-in-law remarked calmly, giving me shivers. "What do you need for those people to eat their words?" My mother-in-law rose up without saying a word, reached for her iPad, and began typing quickly. "They're going to eat their words. This will be the wedding of the year." She called her assistant in Dubai. "I need you to book the yacht for a private ceremony. Yes, the 200-foot one. And contact the photographer who worked with the Al Rashids." While we were planning, my mother forwarded me an article on WhatsApp about how women suffer when they marry someone from a lesser status, or practically poorer class. The note read, "Something for you to think about." "These people have no shame," my mother-in-law mumbled, staring at the message as if unable to believe what she was reading. That afternoon, we sat down to review my family's Instagram accounts. My mother-in-law took notes like a sleuth from a noir novel. "Your sister is obsessed with brands. Look, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, always tagging the stores. Your mom brags about her Cancun vacations as if it were Paris." She burst out laughing. "And your dad? His newest car is a 2018 BMW and he posts it like it's a Lamborghini." "They're just posturing," my father-in-law stated. "People who are secure in their position don't need to show off so much." My mother-in-law made a private Instagram account. She added 3 of my distant cousins as well as 2 work colleagues. "The gossip has to filter out naturally," she explained. "If we add too many people, it will be suspicious." 3 days later, my brother sent images from his weekend at a small resort. The caption reads, "Enjoying the nice things in life. There are layers to everything." "Did you see this?" I asked my mother-in-law, showing her the screen. "Perfect. Now we know we're on their minds." For a test, we purchased a Hermes bag and a Rolex watch. My mother-in-law snapped casual images of me at an expensive cafe and uploaded them to our private account with the caption, "Coffee dates before the preparations." The next day, my distant cousin said, "What a beautiful bag." That night, my aunt texted me, "My dear, I hear you're buying expensive things. Isn't it better to save for a house?" My mother-in-law erupted into laughter. "The gossip has already reached your family. I bet they have a WhatsApp group talking about your new lavish lifestyle." She was not mistaken. My cousin later informed me that someone in the family conversation said, "They're already spending what they don't have. They will be in debt by their first anniversary." The bait worked, I told my mother-in-law. "Now comes the fun part," she said, giving me the contacts on her phone. "You know what? Every luxury wedding needs witnesses, lots of witnesses." My mother-in-law began making calls in Arabic. My father-in-law meantime was conversing in English with someone in London. My fiancé translated bits and pieces. A royal wedding photographer, flowers from the same location where the Prime Minister's daughter married, and a band that performs at the Burj Al Arab. "Isn't this too much?" I inquired, half smiling and half frightened. "Love," my fiancé replied, taking my face in his hands. "My family has spent 20 years building palaces for people who spend in one night what your family earns in a year. This is not too much. You deserve this and more." My mother-in-law finished a final call and smiled at me. "Done. Your family wanted a decent wedding. They're going to have to eat their words when they see what a truly decent wedding looks like." That night, as I looked over the images we had posted to our secret account, I noticed that my sister had attempted to follow us using a phony account. My mother-in-law had refused the request without hesitation. "Let them die of curiosity," she declared. "The desperation will drive them insane, and when they see the real photos." She paused and smiled in a way that made me shiver. "They will understand the true meaning of the word miserable." When we boarded the plane to Dubai, we knew exactly what we were going to do. It was not a routine excursion, it was a deliberate deployment. First class, champagne is offered before to take off, not a word more. I shared a story featuring the glass with the label facing the camera, my hand with the ring showing, and an airplane emoji. There's nothing more. It was only the first piece of bait. When we arrived at the international airport, we were greeted by a chauffeur dressed in a pristine dark gray suit and holding a tablet with our names. I did not even record that. I waited until we arrived to the hotel, not the one we were staying in, but the one my in-laws helped build 5 years ago, and their names are still inscribed on a marble wall. A modest snapshot of the lobby, a silhouette of me with a view of the Burj Khalifa from the suite, and a note to close friends. Life has a way of settling scores. We knew someone would spread such lies. It was simply a matter of time. The first day was for acclimatization. We walked through the mall with my mother-in-law's designer, who had previously prepared the dress fittings. We purchased a couple pieces of casual jewelry. My mother-in-law sent images of me from her private account, knowing who was following and what comments they anticipated to see. Day 2. A yacht tour along the coast. Still no ceremony. My father-in-law's partner owned the yacht, which was 200 feet long and had a deck as white as snow, wealthy but not vulgar. I shared a photo of the skyline from the water at night, with beautiful lights reflected in the sea. The caption read, "A modest vista to begin our lives together." I'm not sure who captured the screenshot. 30 minutes later, my brother commented on his account. "Did you win the lottery or what? Be careful with your debt, little sister." I read it while having my nails done. I did not even respond. I just showed it to my mother-in-law. "Perfect, they're biting," she explained. My mom wasn't far behind. She commented on another photo, this one of me and my fiancé at a restaurant saying, "Daughter, I hope you're being prudent. Love does not pay her credit cards." We glanced at each other and laughed. They had no idea, but they were causing their own doom. On day 3, we decided to ramp up the intensity. We shared a carousel of pre-wedding preparation photographs, including professional cosmetics, close-ups of high couture fabrics, and a view from the suite with the dress hanging on a gold hanger. In one photograph, I can be seen holding a glass of champagne. The ring gleamed brighter than usual. We shared another photo with our hands intertwined, his Patek Philippe watch, my ring. The text I wrote was almost surgical. Marrying the richest man I know in ideals, spirit, and, as it turns out, everything else as well. Thank you for teaching me about actual worth. My relative made a quick comment. Is this the same Aiden that everyone thought sold chairs? Another person responded, bro, Google his full name. I just fell out of my chair. Someone did and shared it. A cousin shared a copy of a Forbes article titled Aiden, last name, the hidden builder of luxury hospitality in the Middle East. Then there's the founder of the Green Humanity Foundation, who received multi-million-dollar donations in Geneva. Those links made it into the family group chat. Screenshot after screenshot. Someone even sent his LinkedIn profile. Then quiet. The family chat, which had previously been a machine of remarks, theories and contempt disguised as gossip, fell silent. 15 minutes. Nothing. No emojis. Not a wow. This is not a congratulations. only the weight of their pride collapsing in real time. Then came the cleanup. I watched as my mother, brother, and even an aunt's comments vanished. They removed everything, as if this would undo the entire story. However, there was no going back. Day 4. The big day. The ceremony was held on the yacht's deck at twilight. There were only a few visitors, including my fiancé's parents, 2 close family partners, and a few acquaintances. Each was carefully chosen, with a social media presence, high-profile following, and a role in the strategy. The wedding was private and wonderful, with no unnecessary peculiarities but no shortage of details. White flowers, soothing live music, and a violinist playing as I approached him. My garment floats in the breeze. When we said "I do," there was no raucous applause, just a shared, genuine smile. Then followed the star post, a photo taken on the deck shortly after dusk. I'm in my dress, he's in his suit, and we're hugging in front of warm lighting. We captioned that image. "Thank you for joining us in this new phase." It was not an ordinary wedding, it was an extraordinary, personal, and unforgettable experience. Below there is another photo of us with his parents. The caption was straightforward. "Infinitely grateful to my new parents for making our dream wedding a reality. Family members choose to be there for you." I tagged my father-in-law. His profile was hidden, but his name was already known. Then the panic started. My father first texted me, asking, "What is all this? Are you degrading us? Where did you receive the money?" Then my mother asked, "Why didn't you tell us you were going to do something like this? You left us out on purpose." And then my sister said, in a voicemail that I still have saved, "I believe it's terrible that you exposed us like this. People ask me if we are impoverished. Is that what you wanted?" I did not respond. The nicest thing happened next. My parents' friends, who don't even follow me, began openly commenting on my images. "How wonderful. I didn't realize your daughter had married Aiden. Congratulations." We attended an opening for one of his hotels in Qatar. Wonderful individuals. Their masks came off in front of their own social group. They could no longer pretend to be above everyone else. They appeared hostile, stupid, and unable to see. And then, as the final nail in the coffin, the reel. It was only 40 seconds long, yet it appeared to be a movie. Drone footage entering the yacht's bow. White flowers falling as I walked. Champagne being given, the final kiss, and the night view. All expertly edited. Not a single second was wasted. The views surged. And then something unexpected occurred. One of my father's friends posted the video on his own Facebook with the caption, "When love and elegance come together, things like this happen. Congratulations, family." He tagged my father. It was the ultimate in public humiliation. Their attempts to maintain control had failed. My relatives began sending me voice messages one after another. "Honey, we need to chat. We could have a celebration here, right? We can do a second more informal celebration for everyone." One even remarked that grandma is wondering why she wasn't invited. And I just watched the notifications come in. As we had tea on the hotel balcony, my mother-in-law expressed it best. "Sometimes the best revenge isn't to destroy anyone. It's simply to show them what they lost by being so arrogant." She was correct. The tension was at its highest. The masks were off. The truth was made public. And best of all, I had not said anything. I simply revealed the reality that they had always denied. They dug themselves a social grave. I just turned on the lights. A week after returning from Dubai, the doorbell rang at 7 p.m. My spouse proceeded to open it. I heard them before I saw them, their artificially happy voices and syrupy tone, which they had never used with me. "How wonderful to see you, son." My father, with a manufactured warmth, turned my stomach. My husband called from the entrance. "Love, your family came to visit." I stepped down the stairs and saw them. My father with a smile that seemed to physically hurt him, my mother clutching an expensive present bag, and my brother anxiously fumbling with his car keys. But what struck me the most was how their gaze grazed me before focusing on my husband as if he were the most important thing in the room. "We brought some little gifts," my mother explained, taking a Chanel bag from the larger suitcase. "For you, my daughter." She extended it to me without looking at me directly, as if it were a formality to be accomplished before proceeding to more important matters. My father offered my spouse a box of Cuban cigars. "To celebrate. I knew you had the makings of a champion from day one." And I just stood there, invisible. The woman they had degraded, dismissed by those who had reared me. My brother had not even greeted me. His gaze followed my husband's every movement as if he were a superstar. "Sit down," my husband stated calmly, sending thrills down my spine. But I want my wife to be present for this entire conversation. It's my turn to defend her. They settled into the living room. My mother continued to address just him. We wanted to get to know you better. Please excuse us if we didn't give you the welcome you deserved. My dad laughed uneasily. It's just that sometimes one misjudges a person's character, but it's clear you're a man of the world. My brother, who could not keep silent, stepped in. In fact, I have an incredible business idea, apps for luxury hotels. With your experience and my technical knowledge. My spouse let them chat, do their calculations, propositions, and desperate attempts to coerce him. I felt like a ghost in my own home, watching my family behave in ways they never had with me. Then, my mother did something that destroyed my heart. She brought out my grandfather's watch, which I had often requested but was denied since, according to her, your future is uncertain. We wanted to give you this, she said to my husband. It's a family heirloom. You've proven you know how to value important things. That's when something within me snapped. I've been asking for that watch for 20 years. 20 years of being told I wasn't ready and wouldn't take care of it. And now they were handing it to him, like if it were a bribe. My hubby has finally spoken. His voice was steady, yet each syllable had a glacial quality. Let me see if I understand. He glanced directly at my brother. A month ago, I was your sister's charity project, right? My brother became red. That was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? My spouse asked, leaning forward. How do you misinterpret enjoying the good things in life? There are levels to everything. He turned to face my father. And you? You told me I was going to drag your daughter into mediocrity, that when I left her in ruins, she shouldn't come crying to you. My father attempted to interrupt. Look, son. I am not your son. His frigid tone could have chilled the air. And you? He asked my mother. You said our wedding was so embarrassing it didn't deserve your presence. My mother sputtered. It was a misunderstanding. We were worried about her. Are you worried? My spouse asked, standing up. Do you know what the most pathetic part of all this is? I haven't changed. I am still the exact same man you met. The only difference is that now you know my father has a bigger bank account than yours. The silence was terrible. Their problem was never my wallet, he explained. Their problem was that they measured their own daughter's worth by the man she married. And when they thought that man had no money, they decided she was worthless too. My brother swallowed hard. My father stared at the floor. My mother fidgeted anxiously with her hands. But you will never forgive yourselves for this, my husband said, taking my hand. The biggest insult wasn't to me, it was to her. You told your own daughter that her love was worthless, that her happiness was an embarrassment, that her wedding was miserable. His voice hardened, becoming as harsh as glass. An extraordinary woman who loved you unconditionally, and you treated her like trash because you thought she was marrying someone poor. Do you know what that says about you as people? My mother attempted to speak. We love her. No. My husband cut her off. You loved her conditionally, depending on how much money her husband had. That's not love, that's convenience. He walked towards the door. The only family I see in this room is her. The watch stays here. The gifts too. And you will leave now. My father rose, stumbling. You can't throw us out like this. We're her family. Family? My husband glanced at him with scorn. Where was that family when she needed your support, when she was crying because the people she loved most humiliated her on the most important day of her life? My brother attempted one final play. We can start over, forget all this. Like you forgot your sister when you thought it wasn't convenient for you. My spouse opened the door. Some wounds are not forgotten. Some wounds are remembered forever. He watched as they left one by one. My mother sought to hug me as she died. I drew away. Honey, please. I'm not your honey anymore, Mom. I murmured in a voice that did not sound like mine. I stopped being that the day you decided my happiness was an embarrassment to you. When the door closed, my husband grabbed me. I cried as I hadn't in years. Not grief, but relief. Finally, someone justified my worth. Finally, someone had prioritized my dignity above everything else. Do you regret it? I questioned him. Regret what? Marrying the most valuable woman I know. Starting a family with you. He peered into my eyes. Never. They lost an extraordinary daughter. I gained an extraordinary wife. There's no comparison. That night, as we were sorting through the gifts they had left, I discovered a note from my mother under the purse. Please forgive us. We were mistaken. I ripped it up without finishing it. Some apologies arrive too late. Some wounds go too deep. But for the first time in years, I felt complete. I no longer required their validation. I no longer required their conditional affection. I had something far better, a family that selected me for who I am rather than what I have. 6 months later, the impacts continued to spread. My brother got dismissed from his job. His supervisor, who had seen the entire humiliation on Instagram, informed him, "We don't want people with that kind of judgment in this company." I found out when my cousin told me in a message she later erased. My parents were social outcasts. At their club's annual charity event, they were openly disregarded. They were viewed as greedy fools who had invested on the wrong horse, according to my aunt, in an unpleasant phone call that I ended after 5 minutes. We have blocked my entire family on social media. The digital solitude became our newfound tranquility. No more harmful notifications. No more emotional blackmail. No more contrived drama. My husband burned a letter from my mother without allowing me to see it. Protection above all else, he added simply. I did not argue. Some wounds do not require extra salt. We agreed to legally change my last name to his. It was symbolic, severing the last formal ties to the family. The day I signed the paperwork, I felt more liberated than ever. The poetic justice was completed. My family sacrificed everything in their desperate drive for prestige and wealth, including their family connection, social reputation, and any hope of reaching the world they so desired. They were left with a poverty of soul. The true wealth was never my husband's money. I restored my dignity. It was discovering that family is chosen, not inherited. It was discovering that unconditional love exists, even if it does not always come from the expected sources. Some wounds break you, while others make you stronger. It was one of the latter. I no longer need their approval. I'm no longer waiting for their regret. I'm no longer carrying their toxins. I have something far better. A life of my own, established on my own terms, with people who accept me for who I truly am. In the end, that is worth more than all of the world's luxury weddings combined. So now I ask you, have you ever had to choose between maintaining family harmony and defending your own dignity? Was the cost worthwhile? Do you think I should have swallowed my pride and forgiven them? Because after all this, I'm still wondering if I went too far, or not far enough.
My husband has secretly fathered his best friend's children. Now I'm terrified when his eldest son showed romantic interest in my daughter. All names are fake. This began as a dark, intrusive thought that I could never shake off, and over the years it has bloomed into a poison flower that infects my entire psyche. I'm a 42-year-old woman. My husband Luke is 43, and so is Amy. I met Luke in college, but he's known Amy since they were about 7. They did everything together and understood each other implicitly. They were best friends. They've always insisted that they are surrogate siblings to each other. Naturally I, as a new girlfriend, felt a little threatened by Amy and her closeness to Luke, but they both reassured me I had nothing to worry about. That their bond was not romantic and had never been sexual. That Amy really was just the sister that Luke never had. I believed them, and it didn't take long for me to forget any and all insecurity I had about Amy. She became my friend too. She officiated our wedding. Luke and I have built a wonderful life together and we always had a strong relationship. After we got married and moved in together, we still saw a lot of Amy, and I was fine with that. I've spent many nights in the town trying to help Amy find a man, as she has always lamented how she is unlucky in love. Luke and I started to have children after we were married, and, at around the same point, so did Amy. For further context, my children are Sophie, 15, Owen, 12, Louise, 10, and Carter, 6. Amy's children are Tom, 17, Kaylee, 14, and twins Adam and Jenna, 9. Now, Amy was not in a relationship at this point. She was not married. As far as I knew, she was dating, but not consistently. As Luke and I had more kids and our family grew, periodically Amy would find herself pregnant as well. It happened a few times, and Luke and I never knew anything about the fathers in question. I kind of assumed that maybe Amy was sleeping around and not keeping in contact with her one-night stands. Luke agreed this was probably the answer. While I did ask each time if Amy knew of paternity, she always said no, and she didn't seem that worried about the idea of raising kids on her own, so I didn't pester her. Of course, she had us to support her, so there was that. While Amy never asked for any help, of course Luke was never going to let his best friend struggle to stay afloat when she had children to raise. Financially, we are very fortunate and privileged. I have a job that pays handsomely, and Luke also had wealthy parents who already knew and loved Amy, so they were happy to provide for her. My in-laws defy all stereotypes, they are the kindest and gentlest people. So we were able to support Amy. To get her somewhere to stay with her kids. People might be tempted to call her a leech, but I never saw it that way. None of us did. She needed help and we could provide it. I also know people are going to criticize her for her lack of responsibility and question why she never used more reliable birth control. Honestly, that is a long story that I don't want to get into because even I don't fully understand her reasoning, but it was quite important to her that she never be on birth control and that whatever came of that choice, she would accept. It wasn't religiously motivated, I know that, but it was that degree of significance to Amy. She really did not want to take birth control. She's explained it to me more than once, but I'm still not clear on why. Of course, Amy being Luke's best friend since they were kids, it's not unreasonable that sometimes they hang out together while I'm not there. Hey, that's fine. Sometimes I hang out with Amy one-on-one as well, though Luke does it more. She was his friend first. This included him going over to where she was staying and at times, sleeping over there. Was I a fool to trust him and believe nothing was going on? Perhaps. But for years, they presented as being buddies? Like siblings. I didn't pick up on any vibes between them, not ever. As one can expect, our children were brought up together. Not in the same house, our home is decently sized, but even we don't have the room for 8 kids. But we made sure Amy's children met ours from a young age, and they always got along and strong bonds of friendship have formed over the years, which is good. Especially if I'm right, and they share blood. I've been dawdling getting to the main point. Yes. I have come to suspect that Luke fathered at least one of Amy's kids, if not all of them. Frankly, I do suspect they are all his. I would never have believed my husband to be capable of such a thing, and he's given me no indication that he is the unfaithful sort. But he does spend a lot of time with Amy, and I have to confess I cannot remember seeing her with any real boyfriend over the years. She would talk to men at bars and parties, I would try to be her wingman, and so on. But nothing ever seemed to really happen, so when she got pregnant the first time, I was curious. When it happened again and again, I began to wonder if she had some sort of secret fella who she didn't want us to know about for whatever reason. But I couldn't think of any reason why she would hide him, especially from her children. After Carter, our youngest, was born, Luke and I agreed that the time had come for him to have a vasectomy. Amy's twins had come just a couple of years prior. Of course, after the procedure, Luke and I continued to make love, but I no longer had to think about pregnancy. Meanwhile, Amy never got pregnant again, after the twins. Is it a coincidence that Luke had a vasectomy and then both of us stopped getting pregnant? I don't know. But Luke would still visit her, and he wasn't just going to see her, but checking up on her children as well. In general, I should have paid more attention to it sooner, but Luke has always acted like a father to them, especially as they've gotten older. He's the father they never had. He doesn't neglect me, or our children, not one bit. He's doing double duty. On its own, the idea that he is a surrogate father to Amy's fatherless children isn't inherently suspicious. One could call it noble. But it combines with a lot of other little things. There is appearance as well. I won't go into specifics of hair color, eye color, or unique physical traits, because I'd rather limit the identifying factors of the people involved and keep this whole thing as vague as possible. But suffice it to say, Amy's children, they certainly look like they could be Luke's. Kaylee has a very unusual allergy that Luke also has. The twins look very much like him, Adam in particular. The older Tom has gotten, the more of Luke I can see in his face and personality. While their race doesn't matter, the reality is that Luke is a different race than Amy, and Amy's children look pretty biracial. I could easily believe their father is the same race as Luke. Doesn't mean Luke has to be the father, but it sure seems like it. I have never voiced my anxieties to either Amy or Luke. I don't want to be the bad guy, and, guilty or innocent, I already know they would flatly deny my accusations and be hurt by them. Imagine if that drama reached the ears of my kids, or Amy's kids. Either way, Luke continues to spend time with Amy and her children, just as her children spend time with mine. I have hinted to Luke that I feel needy for more attention and wish he wouldn't give as much to Amy. But he either missed my cues or pretended that he missed them. I don't want to push this idea that he's favoring her, because it's not even really true. He's never neglected me for her. I can't shake the feeling that Luke and Amy have been intimate before, likely numerous times. So far as I know, Amy never really wanted to be a mother either. She wasn't opposed to it, and when each of her children came into the world she instantly fell in love with them, but motherhood was never really a major part of her life plan or identity. In the grand scheme of things, When we would talk about the future, she would sometimes mention a husband and children, but it never seemed like something she had her heart particularly set on. So, I don't think this is a case of Luke just giving Amy children. I doubt that was the motive for the infidelity. That would have been a side effect. I've been letting this go and turning a blind eye for years. It was a dark thought in the back of my mind after Kaylee's allergy was discovered, but I dismissed it. Got worse after the twins were born. I dismissed it. Then, when Amy stopped having babies, I wanted to feel reassured by that. But, Luke had gotten a vasectomy, so if anything, that made my anxiety worse. There have been nights that I wished the twins were younger, that they had come along after Luke's procedure. It's been twisting me into knots for a long time, but I don't want to be the one who rips our family apart, especially since, technically, I could be wrong. Except now I'm very afraid, because in the last few months we've had a new development in our kids' social circle. Tom, Amy's eldest, asked Sophie out. Sophie? My eldest. She's really blossomed over these last few years and become quite the outspoken beauty, so I'm not shocked to see she's getting male attention, but Tom asking her out had me thrown. Sophie said no, but only because I'm quite protective when it comes to her exploring dating, and she knew she'd have to ask me first. I could tell she was flattered and intrigued by his interest and wanted to say yes. She approached me to talk to me about it. Bless my girl, she did everything right. I think she expected I would see things her way and agree that she could date Tom. Much to her surprise, I very firmly said no. That caused a bit of conflict. She didn't even want to date him that badly, she just couldn't understand why she wasn't allowed to. And I couldn't explain it to her. All I could come up with was, he's too old for you, which he is, but it's not really about that. When Amy and Luke heard, I was so very curious to see what their reactions would be. If either of them had agreed with Sophie and tried to convince me that the two of them should be allowed to date, I think I would have been relieved and taken that as proof that I was wrong about something going on between them. Wrong about who fathered Amy's children. But, the ambiguity continued. They took my side. Both of them put their foot down, though not as fiercely as I did. Luke agreed with me, but he also worried that trying to forbid such a romance would only make Sophie want it more. He's probably right about that. Amy seemed more apathetic to the idea. She didn't want Tom to date Sophie either, and she backed me up. But I don't know, she just wasn't taking it as seriously. She seemed to think it was a fleeting crush. Well, it wasn't. In the months following those conversations, Tom would spend more and more time with Sophie. They would be alone, or with other friends, any time they possibly could. It's become abundantly clear that Tom is crazy about Sophie and wants to be with her. And he definitely wants to be physical. I've been watching them like a hawk and noticed his eye wandering many times. And while I'm doing everything I can to kill this budding romance in the crib, I also am feeling somewhat powerless. Sophie hasn't outwardly defied me, she's still just hanging out with Tom as friends. So forcing them to stop spending time together would be unreasonable, and probably encourage more sneaking around. But I'm so afraid that they're already doing that. My nightmare is that they're secretly dating, and doing God knows what when no one is looking. I've observed Tom being rather handsy with Sophie, and she presents no objection whatsoever. And I just don't know what to say. I had considered trying to convince Sophie that Tom is like her brother, but if she doesn't see him that way, I don't really have the power to rewrite their emotional dynamic or the history of their friendship. I always saw Amy and her children as being like family, but my kids might see Amy's kids more as best friends. The problem is, of course, that if my husband has indeed been carrying on an affair over the years and I'm right about the paternity of Amy's children, then Tom and Sophie cannot be anything more than friends under any circumstances, end of discussion. It can never happen. I feel powerless to stop it though. Luke has apparently talked to Tom about this, as has Amy, but he is unrelenting and he won't give up on Sophie. I think she enjoys that attention and devotion. Tom has also confronted me and asked why I'm so against this when I know him very well and I know he would be good to Sophie. I didn't know what to say other than to fall back on her being too young for him. But that won't work forever. If, God forbid, they're still attracted to each other in a few years, then they'll pursue this with abandon, and once they're legal adults, there's nothing I can do about it. Amy and Luke agree with me that Tom cannot date Sophie, but that's all they've really done. They feel just as powerless as me to prevent teen love. It genuinely feels sometimes like they've just given up and will bury their heads in the sand about this. Just do nothing and hope the feelings pass as Tom and Sophie get older. Which, yeah, they're in high school. It's unlikely Tom will be in love with Sophie forever. But my fear is that she'll let him do something intimate with her before that time comes, something neither of them can take back. I am this close to opening a door I cannot close, this close to screaming at Luke that all this wouldn't be happening if he hadn't cheated on me these many years. If he hadn't been all but raising a second family with his surrogate sister behind my back. Now Luke's son wants to fuck our daughter, his actual sister, because as far as he knows, she's just his childhood friend. And it's all Luke and Amy's fault for what they've done. If I speak up, everything gets blown to hell. On the off chance that I am wrong, I'm a horrible monster who accused the love of my life and one of my closest friends of doing something horrible. If I'm right, it still tears our entire structure apart. The family and social unit we've become over the last several years is gone, and everyone will be stressed and upset even if Luke and I don't divorce. If I do nothing, Sophie's eventually going to sleep with Tom and be his girlfriend. And I'm low-key terrified it will happen sooner than later, or worse, that it's already happened under my nose. I hope to hell this relationship fades as they mature, but what if it doesn't? What if they wind up being together for years? What if they marry, want to get pregnant someday? And if I tell Sophie the truth about Amy's kids, then everyone else finds out too, and that's going to ruin so many lives. It would shatter my kids' perception of their father, and their Aunt Amy. Luke is Owen's hero. I don't even want to think about how much this would hurt him. And what about Amy's children? They are innocent. They didn't ask for this. They don't control where they came from, and I don't want to hurt them. Admittedly, I'm not happy with Tom at the moment. A week ago I saw him put his hand on Sophie's butt and I wanted to knock his teeth out. But even he doesn't deserve to be burdened by the knowledge that it's his half-sister he's been fantasizing about. It's all so fucked up and I don't know what to do. I've been looking the other way and letting my husband and his best friend insult me for such a long time now. I thought I could live with it. But this business with Tom and Sophie has me distressed. Judgment, NTA. Update 1. First of all, wow. I did not expect my post to get as much traction as it did. I was half worried that someone in my family or social circle might find it, especially when someone alerted me that the post had been shared to Facebook. But, as far as I can tell, no one in my family has seen it. I want to thank all of the kind commenters who wished me well. To those who were more frustrated with my indecision, I get it. But I was operating with an uncertain situation and the stakes were incredibly high. I feel like no matter what choice I made, something could and likely would go wrong. I've spent the last 5 years imagining different scenarios based on different ways I could go about this if I ever decided to act on it. To everyone who was clamoring for an update, I have one for you. I previously said that I was going to do a secret DNA test, that I had decided on that course of action. In the end, I couldn't go through with it, and now I am regretting that, because the window to do so is essentially closed. I just felt like it would be out of line for me to do that to another person's child behind their back. Ethically, it was dicey. I've since consulted with my lawyer as many commenters suggested, and she advised me against doing so, because no matter what the results were, it would make me look bad in a potential divorce proceeding. But I really wish I had done it anyway, and just not told anyone. Because I really, badly need to know, and I still don't know for sure. Likewise, I wanted to tell Sophie in confidence, but the more I thought about it, even that seemed over the line. Like I had no right to plant such ideas in her mind about her father without even talking to him first. So, what I ended up doing was confronting Luke and Amy. Many comments suggested this as well. I finally told both of them that we needed to have a serious talk. It felt counterproductive to approach just one of them, because I figured they would tell the other about what happened in their own words before I could prepare my own. I wanted them both to hear what I had to say. Once all the kids were at school, I laid down all of my suspicions and the reasons. I made it clear how much I love both of them, but a combination of clues had led me to notice the similarities between Luke and Amy's children, and I didn't even list all of them in the original post. For example, Luke has been a sleepwalker in the past. So have Sophie, Tom, and Adam. I said over and over how much they meant to me and how I didn't want to believe it, but the thought had crept into my mind in the past. How I had dismissed it before. But now, with Tom and Sophie having crushes on each other, it became necessary to pose the question. So I asked if they had ever crossed the line, if Luke had ever been unfaithful, if there was even the slightest possibility that any of Amy's children were his. I was just trying not to cry. Well, they reacted exactly as I would have expected. Their responses were perfect and so very well rehearsed. I genuinely can't tell if it was honest emotion or powerful gaslighting. Amy was more upset than Luke, or at least more outwardly upset. She was angry, offended at the accusation. Luke just seemed heartbroken by it. Maybe they were just acting, but I don't know. Somehow, they had reasonable responses to all of the points I brought up. They asked questions I didn't know how to answer. I had never objected to them having alone time before. Why did it suddenly bother me now? Do Amy's children really resemble Luke that much, or are things like hair color pretty basic traits to have in common? The whole family had always treated Amy and her kids as part of our unit, and I had previously commended Luke for stepping up and being a father to Amy's kids since they didn't have one. Why was I now saying it was a bad thing? What exactly did I want them to do? How could I think such a thing about them? Why had I waited so long to say something? Luke was more understanding than Amy. He respected my feelings, or at least he acted like he did. Amy appeared to feel more betrayed by what I said. I ended up apologizing several times even though I'm not sure I did anything wrong. Luke also apologized for anything he'd done, to indicate he was unfaithful. I asked Amy more pointedly that, if not Luke, who had fathered her children? She snapped back that it was none of my business, and I could tell she was in no mood to get personal or vulnerable with me after my accusations. I'm not proud to say that I lost my temper, and said that after everything we had done for her and her children, such information was not a lot to ask and perhaps she owed it to us. I regretted the words as soon as I said them, but Amy shouted back that I had never done anything for her, that it was Luke and his parents who had kept her afloat all these years, not me. She went on a longer tirade about how I had always acted superior to her, which I don't believe I did, though it's possible that I gave off that vibe unintentionally. Luke did his best to calm her down, but the room was still fraught with tension. I don't know Reddit, I just don't know. It's driving me to the edge of madness. There is a way to be certain, of course. Not certain of my husband's fidelity, but of the paternity of Amy's children. So I asked Luke, for my own peace of mind, for the sake of our daughter, and for our family unit, if he could please get a DNA test done, a paternity test. I went on to say that I knew he disliked and distrusted such things, but that I really needed this. I could see the pain in Luke's eyes. Maybe it was an act, but he did seem genuinely hurt that I was asking for this, that him giving me his word that he had always been faithful was not enough for me. But he very reluctantly agreed to participate in a DNA test. Unfortunately, Amy did not, and that's where we hit a roadblock. I was afraid of this. But Amy was infuriated at the whole concept and told me in no uncertain terms that I would not be getting samples of her children's DNA and basically told me to fuck off for asking, several times in several variations. I pressed Luke, and honestly he was a bit useless but probably right. He tried to convince Amy but she wouldn't hear of it, and he kind of shrugged to me when I pushed him for further support. Because he can't force her to get the test done, if she refuses, that's really a dead end. Trust me, it is. I looked into this quite a bit and consulted with my lawyer. The problem is, Luke could, in theory, petition the court to demand a paternity test for Tom and the others. The issue is that, to do this, he'd essentially be claiming he slept with Amy and he believes her children to be his. That would be the version of events he'd be maintaining. But Luke has staunchly insisted that nothing ever happened with Amy. That he never cheated on me. Whether or not he's being honest about this is another story, but he'd essentially have to go on record and make a claim that he isn't prepared to make. He is quite certain the children aren't his and he has no intention of fighting for custody of them. So no judge is going to compel Amy to submit samples of her children's DNA. Tom is also old enough that his consent would be a factor. If both he and Amy refuse to participate in the test, it's unlikely that Luke would have a case. He'd have to target one of Amy's younger children, like say, one of the twins. But he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to take his best friend to court to prove something that, in his words, he already knows isn't true. Luke is asking me to please just let this go, and trust him, because pursuing this will fracture everything. And according to my lawyer, it's not realistic anyway. For Luke to establish paternity, he would need to admit to an affair in the first place, and he's not doing that. And if he did, that would pretty much be all the proof I needed to be certain, even if I'd need more in a court case. I pestered him further about Tom and Sophie. Insisted that I didn't want them dating. Luke agreed, and apparently Amy still agrees. Luke plans to have a talk with Tom and activate protective Papa Bear mode. Among other things, he's going to remind Tom that in a couple of months when he turns 18, him being intimate with Sophie will literally be a crime. I wouldn't actually press charges against him as I know he'd never do anything against Sophie's will, but I'm not above implying the threat. Thankfully, Luke isn't either. I did ask him if he'd be open to potentially swiping a sample of Tom's DNA to do a private paternity test, but he was very hesitant about the idea. Like me, he viewed it as unethical. He also pointed out that if we were to do this and Amy found out, it would mean the end of our friendship with her, most likely. Things are, Luke believes, still in a salvageable state, where Amy and I could reconcile and become friends again, and I can see how much he wants this to happen. But, if I did a DNA test on Tom behind Amy's back and she found out, I think she would hit the roof and I wouldn't entirely blame her. Though I'd be very interested to see the results. Luke ended up going to see Amy and spending the night. I know all of you are cringing and throwing up your hands, and trust me, I wasn't happy about it. That was a very long conversation. But he was adamant that he needed to perform damage control. So they spent the night together. With Luke maintaining that nothing happened, I did not sleep a wink and I kept texting him for updates. So far as I can tell, Amy will cool off, but she needs a little time. Luke and I talked things over when he came back the next morning. It was an emotionally fulfilling conversation and we ended up agreeing to take the kids, our kids, not Amy's, to visit their grandparents for a few days. It was an impromptu visit, but we've done it before and they were delighted to have us. I just really wanted our family to spend some time together away from Amy's side of the family, so to speak. I always love getting to see my in-laws. I'll refer to them as Jim, 75 million, and Kat, 67 degrees Fahrenheit. I know Reddit is famous for stories about the mill from hell, but in my life that couldn't be further from the truth. I feel safe with them. To the point that, when they took notice of how distant Luke and I were from each other, I finally relented and confessed my fears. I told them of my anxiety that Amy and Luke were having an affair, and that Amy's children might be his. Here's where things got a little bit interesting. When I told them what I was feeling, Kat just gave Jim this pointed look, and did a big, dramatic sigh. So it turns out, Kat has had similar misgivings to mine and genuinely suspected over the years that Luke and Amy were closer than they'd ever admit, that they had crossed the line in the past. Jim, on the other hand, simply refuses to even consider the idea. He has always insisted that Kat is seeing things that aren't there. He maintains that Luke and Amy are like siblings, and would never do such a thing. Kat thinks his stance on this is naive and that, even if she and Jim had taken Amy in and loved her like a daughter, that didn't mean Luke viewed her as a sister or that she viewed him as a brother. But Jim just continued to insist that this is what they are and had always been. I could tell that he and Kat have already had this conversation before, and they kept going in circles, with Kat getting exasperated. She pointed out that, surrogate siblings or not, Luke and Amy were not actually brother and sister, so nothing was stopping them from being physical together if they felt a mutual attraction. At that point, Jim just sighed and walked away from the conversation. So yes, Kat has privately wondered if Amy's children weren't fathered by Luke, which is part of why she has always treated them as her grandchildren. Which was never something that I minded, to be clear. I also don't mind that Kat never voiced these concerns to me. She had no proof, and she saw far less of Luke and Amy's closeness in our adult lives than I did. As for the kids? They're doing all right. I don't know what Amy told her children, but I think the general consensus, the official version of events, is that Amy and I had a fight and needed a break from each other. That's what Luke and I told our children, and when pressed for more information, Luke did defend me and shut down the questions, saying it wasn't their business. I don't know if Amy kept to that version of events, but my children and her children have each other's phone numbers and social media, so they've presumably still been in contact over the last 2 days. I think my kids would have kept Amy's kids in the loop on the updates, and if Amy had told them anything else significant, they would have relayed that information to my kids. After all, we know Sophie and Tom are very close. I did try and talk to Sophie about that more, but the timing was off, because Sophie rejected my counsel and interpreted my reinforced reluctance as being attributed to my fight with Amy. She maintained that she wasn't dating Tom. To what degree that's actually true, I don't know. But she was going to remain close friends with him, and while she isn't usually a disobedient child, she made it very clear that she was putting her foot down on this one, and, to be fair, I can't really justify trying to separate them or forbid them from being friends. They've known each other for years. Luke has my back on them not being allowed to date, but he wouldn't have my back on them not hanging out anymore. I wish I had a more definitive update. If anything significant happens in the next few days, I can let you guys know. I'm mostly just kicking myself for not having done the secret test, even for my own peace of mind, as now I feel like I'm locked out of the only way to get definitive proof one way or the other. Comments. Comment 1. They spent the night together. OP, come on. That's not acceptable. They're definitely a couple. Comment 2. Honestly, do you really think he's sleeping on the sofa? Why is he sleeping over there if there is nothing going on? You go to your friend's house and talk, and then you go back home to your wife and kids. WTF? What about your kids? He doesn't give a shit about any of you. Time to have another chat with the lawyer, and you really need to get more angry about this. You are way too understanding. This woman has wrecked all your lives, and even your in-laws have been suspecting the same all along. Comment 3. Luke and Amy are a couple and OP is the side piece at this point. Update 3. I think my husband fathered his best friend's children, and now one of them is attracted to my daughter. 1 day later. I didn't expect to have another update so quickly, but after posting my first update I did a lot of thinking about my kids. I ultimately decided that whatever else happened, I needed to warn Sophie about the situation, and do so immediately. To hell with Luke and whatever that meant for him. To hell if that meant all of the kids learned of the situation. She needed to be aware of what she might be getting herself into. So I discreetly kept her out of school. We went back home, to our home, last night, and this morning, I dropped everyone off and saved Sophie for last, before driving right past her school and telling her that we needed to talk. Always a frightening thing for a teenager to hear from a parent, but I was quick to establish that she was not in trouble, but she needed to know the truth about why Amy and I were fighting, why her dating Tom was out of the question. I very gently explained that because of Luke's closeness to Amy and Tom's resemblance to him, I had come to suspect that perhaps Luke and Amy were intimate at some point over the years. If that was true, and there was any chance Tom's father was actually Luke, that would be a significant problem. Sophie was quiet during all of this, and even after I had stopped talking to let her respond, she paused for quite a while, before she finally said that we needed to get Tom and discuss this with him as well. I had no objections, so she texted him to meet with us. They're both skipping school today, but Sophie gets straight A's and this is extremely important, so I looked the other way. Tom came to meet us, and Sophie had me relay what I told her to him as well. I apologized to him for any indication I might have given that I didn't think he was good enough for my daughter, and to both of them for not telling the truth sooner. Tom and Sophie just gave each other this oddly knowing stare. And Reddit, that's when they blew my mind. Sophie spoke first, with Tom backing her up. They revealed to me that in fact, they had already known about Luke and Amy, or at least they had strongly suspected. Apparently Tom has overheard conversations that are questionable, as well as overhearing the sounds of sex from Amy's room, sounds he would just as soon forget, but all signs point to Amy's lover having been Luke. Tom had wondered for a very long time, and back in January, he finally voiced his fears to Sophie. She agreed with them. She could also see a strange sort of closeness between her father and his mother. They agreed that Luke was likely having an affair. They agreed that because of Kaylee's allergy, Luke might very well be her father. And if Kaylee was Luke's daughter, the rest of Tom's siblings could be Luke's as well. Tom could be Luke's kid himself. The math led them to the same places as me. So Sophie and Tom came up with a little plan. As it turns out, they are not in love. They never were. They're still just best friends. But they had the same instinct as me, that they didn't want to blow up our entire family and social unit without more direct evidence, which Tom has been working on acquiring. And though Sophie very badly wanted to tell me the truth, she was hesitant because she knew it would shatter me. She had no idea I was already suffering in silence. Sophie apologized for not voicing her suspicions sooner. Honestly, we both cried, and I made sure she understood that none of this was her fault, and that I loved her very much. So, the bottom line is, Sophie and Tom already know they could be half-siblings and aren't actually interested in being a couple. That was their idea for how to rock the boat. To force Luke and Amy to do something about the situation rather than just keep making a fool out of me. I also think it was Sophie's way of punishing them for their affair. Teenagers can be vindictive, so they concocted this idea that they wanted to date. Every flirtation I've witnessed, every inappropriate touch, all staged, apparently, and for the benefit of Luke, Amy, or both. This was supposed to make them sweat, and Tom expected they would jump out of their seats to forbid it from happening. When I was the one who did instead, that kind of threw the kids for a loop. They couldn't understand why I cared more than the actual cheaters. They began to suspect that maybe I knew. Tom confronting me that one time about why can't I date Sophie, was him trying to gauge if I knew or not. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised. Sophie and Tom have always been close friends and confided in each other. Maybe I should be a little more concerned at how sneaky they've been, but honestly, I'm just so relieved they're not dating. Sure, they could be lying to throw off the scent, I guess, but they apparently already knew that they're likely related. They didn't blink at all when I told them. We even had a bit of a laugh together when Tom mentioned how he had been a little offended that I was so against him dating my daughter before. I kind of jokingly asked him, "So you don't think she's gorgeous?" And Tom, bless his heart, shrugged it off. She is. But so is my English teacher, and I'm not asking her out either. Either way, the question now is, where to go from here? We have to figure that out. I will say that it is such a relief to have told Sophie, and I feel like an elephant has taken one of its feet off my chest. Having her in my corner, and Tom in my corner as well, means a lot to me, and even though I basically just got it absolutely confirmed that Luke is sleeping with Amy, I kind of already knew that anyway. So now it's just a question of how to proceed. Tom has already volunteered to submit his DNA so I can compare it to Luke's, and both he and Sophie advise me not to tell Luke and Amy when I do this, which I agree with. They're both completely on my side, which means more to me than I can ever express to them. Tom has also been trying to set up a camera in Amy's room to catch her and Luke in the act. Sophie told me flat out that I needed to divorce her dad, and hearing that from my own daughter made it clearer than it's ever been. She's right. Comments. Comment 1. Okay doke. Tom and Sophie have to be sitting on the couch when Luke comes home and drops the bomb that Sophie is pregnant. Or, to say that they had the same thoughts and did their own DNA tests and surprise. You are the father up. Actually, that was something they had considered doing before. Now that the three of us are on the same page, it's not the worst idea. Comment 2. Why not just DNA test the two kids against each other and stop dragging it out? The test will let you know if they share the same father, and then it would be clear your husband is the father of both. Comment 3. Getting 2 ancestry test kits is simple. They are on Amazon. Comment 4. I don't even care if it's fictional or not, these updates have me hooked. Comment 5. I finally understand why my granny used to watch those god-awful drama shows. It's super fake, but damn if it isn't entertaining. These posts are just new age soaps. I am not the OOP. Please do not harass the OOP.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.
My husband demanded a DNA test to deny that the baby was his. He was having an affair and planning to take control of my father-in-law's company. The words that just came out of my husband's mouth are far worse than the pain that rips through me like a sharp blade. Adam comes forward, his pricey suit immaculately ironed despite the 12 hours we've spent in this delivery room, while I'm still gasping for air, trembling and drenched in sweat. I want a DNA test. He doesn't question our baby daughter's paternity. His voice is dispassionate and flat, as if he's ordering coffee. With her hands still holding our baby, my baby, the nurse freezes. The beeping monitors suddenly become too loud and obtrusive, and the room appears to shrink. Dr. Collins's wrinkled face wrinkles in worry as he looks up from his charts. Adam, what are you talking about? My voice has an odd, aloof quality, as if it were someone else's. He refuses to look at me. Rather, he looks coldly and calculatingly at our daughter, who weighs 7 pounds, 4 ounces of perfection. You heard me, McKenna. I want proof she's mine. Like poison gas, the accusation lingers in the air. This is the result of 12 years of marriage. To make him feel even a small portion of the agony pulsing through my chest, I want to shout and throw something. Rather, I chuckle. It's a harsh, bitter, terrible sound. Get out. In my mouth, the words taste like metal. Get out before I call security. Dr. Collins begins. Mrs. Harrison. But Adam interrupts. I have every right to be here, and every right to request this test. His fingers skim the screen as he takes out his phone. My lawyer says. Your lawyer? You've been talking to your lawyer while I was in labor, I blurt out. The only indication that he is still capable of feeling guilt is a faint flush that appears on his neck. I've been preparing for this moment for weeks. Weeks. The term keeps repeating in my mind. My husband was organizing this ambush as I was folding little onesies and choosing nursery colors. I feel as though I've been physically struck by the understanding. Bless the nurse, she puts herself in our way. Sir, perhaps we should continue this discussion outside. No. I ignore my aching body's protest and push myself to sit up straighter. Let him stay. Let him watch the test. Let him see exactly how wrong he is. Something flickers in Adam's eyes, but his expression remains unchanged. Disappointment? Solace? I'm no longer able to tell. I used to be familiar with all telltale signs and micro-expressions. At what point did my husband lose his identity? Dr. Collins adds, I'll arrange it immediately. In a deliberately bland tone. Though I must say, in my 30 years of practice, just do it, instructs Adam. I used to find his nervous habit of straightening his tie charming. The sooner we know the truth, the better. The truth, as though he still knows what that word implies. My girl, our daughter, is sleeping soundly in the bassinet, oblivious to the storm that is building all around her. Her dark hair, like mine, is already beginning to curl, and her little fingers are balled into fists. Even though my hands are shaking, I answer. Fine, in a calm voice. Do the test. But when it proves what I already know, don't expect forgiveness. It buzzes on Adam's phone. When he looks at it, his mask briefly comes off, guilt, terror. He's on his way to the door before I can comprehend it. He says, I'll be back tomorrow, without turning around. My lawyer will contact you about the arrangements. After he leaves, the door clicks shut, and I can breathe again. Dr. Collins touches my shoulder tenderly. McKenna, I'm so sorry. Don't. My fingers already discover Sam's number as I grab for my phone. I'll let my cousin know what to do. He always does. Just get me the paperwork for the test. And, Dr. Collins, make sure it's witnessed at every step. His eyes light up with comprehension as he nods. Of course. I gaze at my daughter once more, committing to memory every exquisite feature of her face. One thing is certain, regardless of the game Adam is playing or the falsehoods he is telling himself. He doesn't know what he's begun. After 3 days in the hospital, Sam feels as though his flat is a haven. As Tara bustles around the kitchen brewing tea, I curl up with Emma on his worn leather couch. My worries are calmed by the familiar smell of coffee grounds and old books, but my hands continue to shake. Saying, "He's changed all the locks?" I observe Sam pacing. "Changed the security codes too. 12 years of marriage, and he locks me out like I'm some kind of criminal." With his journalist's notebook already stuffed with scrawled notes, Sam stops pacing. When exactly did things start changing with Adam? Think back carefully. The inquiry is a kind of gut strike. I close my eyes and attempt to remember when my marriage started to go apart. When I say, maybe 4 months ago. He started working late, missing doctor's appointments. Said it was a big merger, the Preston Tech deal. Tara's expression is disturbed as she puts down a mug of chamomile tea. That closed months ago. I gave it a quick glance. How do you know that? Because my sister works in their PR department. Tara and Sam exchange glances. The deal fell through in March. March. When Adam began bringing pricey new suits home. When the enigmatic business travels started. When he completely stopped caressing me. Sam taps his pen against the notebook and says, "This is what doesn't add up. Why wait until the baby is born to demand a DNA test? Why not do it during pregnancy?" Because he needed a scene, states Tara in a low voice. He needed witnesses. It dawns on me like a blast of cold water. He's assembling evidence against me. Emma stirs in my arms, and I instinctively move her blanket. Her little face reminds me of how calm and trustworthy I used to be. Sam says, "There's something else." But he hesitates. I made some calls. Adam's been meeting with divorce attorneys since January. January. When I initially informed him of my pregnancy. He remarked that everything was fine as he grinned and gave me a hug. That son of a... I stopped myself and glanced down at Emma. Why go through with the pregnancy if he was planning this all along? Because of the Harrison family trust, Tara responds accordingly. Your father-in-law's will had specific conditions about heirs, didn't it? Things begin to come together. The trust only pays out if there are legitimate children. Even I can hear the hollowness in my voice. He needed proof the baby wasn't his to invalidate the claim. Sam hears a buzzing sound on his phone. His face darkens as he looks at it. Adam just posted on LinkedIn. He's accepted a new position at Grant Technologies. Grant? Something in my memory is triggered by the name. Wait, isn't that the company that tried to buy out Harrison Industries last year? Sam concludes, the same one your father-in-law refused to sell to before he died. We all jump when someone knocks on the door. Glancing through the peephole, Tara takes a rapid step back. It's Adam. I say, don't open it. And squeeze Emma tighter. Adam's words, McKenna, echo through the door. I know you're in there. The DNA test is scheduled for tomorrow morning. My lawyer insists you be present. I take Sam's arm as he approaches the door. Wait, let him talk. Adam goes on. You're making this harder than it needs to be. His voice becoming almost soft. Just come home. We can work this out. I slowly get to my feet so as not to wake Emma. Work what out, Adam? The lies? The secret meetings? Or how about the trust fund you're trying to steal? Quiet. Next. I don't know what you think you know. I know enough. I no longer tremble when I speak. I know about Grant Technologies. I know about the divorce lawyers, and soon, I'll know everything else too. One more pause. The veneer of tenderness vanishes when he talks again. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Neither do you. My heart hardens as I gaze down at our kid, my girl. Game on, Adam. He backtracks along the corridor. After locking the door, Sam looks at me. What's the plan? I take my phone out and go through my old contacts until I locate the one I need. First, we find out everything we can about Grant Technologies. And then, I hit the dial. We call in some favors. Before a recognizable voice responds, the phone rings again. Dr. Collins, I need your help with something. With a somber expression, Dr. Collins slips the phone across his desk. These messages were automatically backed up to the cloud account you shared. I thought you should see them. When I take up the smartphone, my hands shake. 3:47 a.m. is the timestamp displayed. I went into labor 2 days prior. The message says, everything's arranged. Once the test results come back, she won't have any claim to the trust. Make sure you stick to the plan. Adam has responded. She suspects nothing. Just keep your father focused on the merger. Evelyn Grant, says Dr. Collins in a low voice. Daughter of Marcus Grant. I find the name to be bitter. Last year, he attempted to compel my father-in-law to sell his business. With his journalistic instincts taking over, Sam leans forward. The same Marcus Grant who mysteriously acquired 3 board seats after your father-in-law's death. I continue to scan through texts, each one getting worse. Plans, meetings, and personal information that makes me queasy. Since January, when I informed him about the pregnancy, they have been dating. When Sam says, the timing's not coincidental, Grant Technologies announced their hostile takeover bid last week. With Adam's help, they'll have controlling interest in Harrison Industries unless there's a legitimate heir. The parts fit together perfectly. That's why he needs the DNA test, to show Emma isn't his. It's not about the baby at all, it's about the company. We are interrupted by a knock. Tara enters with a pallid face. Adam's here, with lawyers. Even though my heart is racing, I make myself remain composed. Let them in. Adam walks in with 2 suits that probably cost more than my yearly income, as if he owns the place. He's wearing a tie I've never seen before, and he appears colder and sharper. Dr. Collins begins. This is a private medical facility, but Adam interrupts. We're conducting a paternity test that my client has every right to oversee. The senior attorney takes the stand. We have concerns about potential tampering. I chuckle. I'm unable to stop it. Tampering? That's rich, coming from you. Adam's mouth clenches. Careful, McKenna, you're already facing potential fraud charges. I hold out the phone and ask, if what? If these messages somehow become public? The ones showing you and Evelyn planning to steal your father's company? He becomes motionless. I catch a glimpse of genuine terror in his eyes. You had access to your private messages? On our shared cloud account? I get to my feet, my rage giving me courage. The one you forgot to disconnect when you were so busy planning your little corporate takeover? Something is whispered in Adam's ear by the younger attorney. His expression gets gloomy. He responds. This changes nothing. But his tone falters. The test will proceed exactly as planned. Dr. Collins cuts in. Under my supervision. With witnesses present, unless you'd prefer to explain to the board why you're colluding with Grant Technologies while serving as Harrison Industries CFO. Sam moves forward while Adam's hand fumbles with his phone. I wouldn't. My article about corporate espionage at Grant Technologies goes live in an hour. Fascinating stuff about insider trading and family betrayal. Adam responds, you're bluffing, yet his forehead is dripping with perspiration. I approach while speaking quietly. You want a war, Adam? Fine. But remember, you taught me everything about corporate finance during those late-night strategy sessions. Everything. McKenna? And I learned something else from you too. I show him his most recent communication to Evelyn, which has to do with love and the words, forever always. Keep receipts. The attorneys look at each other. His throat is cleared by the elder. Perhaps we should discuss terms. No terms, I respond, observing Adam's flawless exterior crumble. No deals. You wanted to play dirty? Let's play. But remember, you're not just fighting for money anymore, you're fighting for survival. Adam's shoulders are stiff with rage as they depart. Sam lets out a faint whistle. That was just the beginning? I finish sitting back down as my legs threaten to give out. Doctor, how long till the test results, Collins? 24 hours, he adds, closely examining me. Are you certain of this? After we begin? I'm sure. I glance at the picture of him and my father-in-law at the medical school graduation that is on his desk. He made the incorrect decisions. I'm not going to make the same error. Squeezing my shoulder, Sam asks, what comes next? I take out my personal phone and navigate to a number I never would have imagined using. We then speak with Evelyn Grant. She has to find out what sort of man she's actually interacting with. I feel small as I adjust Emma's carrier on my arm, trying to see my reflection in the polished marble of the Grant Technologies lobby, which gleams with wealth and power, all steel and glass reaching toward the sky. I'm wearing one of Adam's favorite suits, the one he bought me for board meetings, and it fits differently now, but the armor is what counts. The receptionist says, Miss Grant is in a meeting, without even looking up. Tell her McKenna Harrison is here, I add, keeping my voice calm, with her fiancé's baby. Her head shoots up, eyes widening as she takes in Emma's dark hair, which are much like Adam's, and the clicking of keys stops. After 5 minutes, I find myself seated across from Evelyn Grant in her corner office. She is younger than I thought she would be, and her engagement ring, which is 3 carats and princess cut, is perfectly polished, resembling the one in Adam's browser history. But her hands betray her, squeezing a pen until her knuckles turn white. "I don't understand," she says. "Adam never mentioned a wife. A baby." Emma fusses, but I handle it with practiced ease. Funny how those details slip his mind when he's planning corporate takeovers. Color fades from her face. "You can't prove," she says. With screenshots visible, I move my phone across her desk. "I can, in fact. When your father finds out that his ideal future son-in-law is still married, what will he say? That he's manipulating Harrison Industries stock by utilizing your relationship." She says, "You're lying," but she's already reading, swiping through messages with her immaculately manicured finger. I go on, observing her expression. "The DNA test is tomorrow." Adam seems pretty certain about the results, almost as if he knows something I don't. She looks up abruptly, and her eyes flicker with dread and recognition. Sam's text makes my blood run cold, and my phone buzzes. The lab was broken into yesterday night. Security footage was deleted. Evelyn murmurs, "He wouldn't," more to herself than to me. "Your father's company stands to gain millions if Harrison Industries falls," I declare, leaning forward. "And Adam stands to gain everything, unless there's a legitimate heir." When the pen she is holding breaks, ink spills down her immaculate desk calendar, discoloring both merger dates and wedding venue appointments. "Get out," she says tremblingly, "before I call security." I slowly stand up, drawing Emma next to me. "What's funny, do you know? 5 years ago, he purchased the same ring for me. Promised me the same thing indefinitely. Utilized the same pet names as well." I said, "Get out." I whisper, "Check his phone. The one he keeps in his gym locker. The one that conveys genuine messages." She becomes motionless. "How did you?" "Because I used to be you. Young, in love, and sure that he was unique." I make my way to the door, then stop. "Oh, and Evelyn, pay attention to his left eyebrow when you confront him. When he lies, it quivers." On her broken face, the elevator doors close. "It's done," I text Sam, my hands shaking. "Begin the second phase?" He responds right away. Tara's lab contact verified attempts at manipulation. The test is being moved to a secure location by Dr. Collins. My heart stops when I open another message that appears from an unknown number. Adam writes, "Clever girl, but you can't remember who taught you how to play chess. Check your email from Harrison Industries. The creative accounting remedies you assisted me with last year are going public, or you have an hour to leave the board. It's your turn." My stomach churns as I realize how long Adam has been plotting this. I stare at the screen, remembering late evenings spent poring over spreadsheets, following his advice, and signing agreements he swore were regular. I see my father-in-law's fortitude, my own resolve, and something else, something Adam never understood about the Harrison legacy, in Emma's face as she stirs, her little fingers capturing my finger. I call Dr. Collins. "How soon will you get access to last year's original audit files?" "Already done," he responds. "And McKenna, I discovered something intriguing in your father-in-law's personal documents. It has to do with a backup plan." I'm grinning for the first time in days. "Tell me everything." The game is only getting started. With its clean whiteness and security cameras monitoring our every step, the safe lab feels like a fortress. Dr. Collins stands at the testing station, his face impassive while Adam's lawyers hover close, and Emma sleeps in her carrier, unaware of the tension that permeates the space. Dr. Collins says, "All parties will remain present, and the results will be available in 30 minutes. With mascara smearing her cheeks and her flawless poise ruined, Evelyn storms in as the door flings open. "You're a jerk." Adam takes a step back, his self-assured facade falling off. "Evelyn, this isn't the locker at the gym." She throws her phone in his direction. It strikes the wall with a crash. "You're still married despite having 3 other ladies." The lawyers look at one another in panic, and one of them grabs for his briefcase, but Sam stops him. "Until we hear those results," he continues softly, "nobody leaves." I had forgotten Adam's uneasy gesture until he straightened his tie. "This is absurd." "Whatever you heard from McKenna." "She didn't have to tell me anything," Evelyn murmurs. "Your friend Marcus was quite helpful once I showed him the real numbers behind the Grant Technology merger." Adam's face loses color. "You didn't." "Daddy's on his way," she replies, her smile harsh and cruel. With the SEC. A message from Tara says, security footage recovered, lab break-in suspect identified. My phone vibrates. I slide the phone to Dr. Collins, who stares at Adam's younger lawyer and begins to perspire after examining the picture. Dr. Collins remarks, interesting? Very interesting indeed. I can see Adam's eyes flit between us, calculating that expression he gets when he's about to give up a piece to keep his game alive. The accounting discrepancies, he continues abruptly. All of which McKenna approved. She bears equal responsibility. With the exception of the backup plan, I interrupt, observing his expression. The one my father-in-law left with Dr. Collins prior to his passing. Adam becomes motionless. What? Adam, he was aware. Concerning the embezzlement. Concerning Grant Technologies. Including your attempts to access Emma's trust fund before she was even born, I reply steadily. He documented everything. The senior attorney clears his throat, saying, Mr. Harrison, maybe we ought to stop talking. Adam utterly loses his cool and turns to face me, his fists clenched. You're playing a bluff. Richard never did. Your father trusted me. Whispers Dr. Collins quietly. Not just as his doctor, but as executor of his estate, including the real will. The device emits a beep. Test results ready? Sam stops Adam before he can get the printout. It's over, Sam declares. The SEC has everything, the fake DNA test orders, the embezzlement records, even your deals with Marcus. Adam backs away from the door when he hears heavy, deliberate footsteps echoing in the hallway. McKenna, he attempts, his tone lessening to that well-known deceptive one. We can still make this right. For Emma's benefit. Don't you dare use our daughter as a bargaining chip, I shout, my words blazing like venom. The door opens, and Marcus Grant comes in first, followed by 2 SEC agents, while Tara records everything with her phone. One agent says, Adam Harrison, you are being investigated for securities fraud. The events that follow are shown in slow motion. Sam yells something about betrayal, Adam rushes toward the emergency exit, the younger lawyer blocks him, and Emma sleeps soundly through it all, oblivious to the fact that her world is turning on its axis. Dr. Collins holds out the test findings while touching my arm. Are you curious? I look at the paper and go back to all the times I questioned whether Adam was telling the truth or if I had failed as a mother or a wife. As I watch the SEC agents handcuff my spouse, I finally respond, no, because the outcomes are no longer important. She is my daughter. I only need to know that. Marcus Grant walks toward his tomb. Mrs. Harrison, your testimony is required tomorrow. I interrupted, drawing Emma next to me. I'm taking my daughter home right now, and as we go, I hear Adam yelling my name, desperate now, realizing what he's lost, and I don't turn back. Some games aren't worth winning, and some victories come from walking away rather than seeking revenge. I have all I need in my arms tonight, but tomorrow will come attorneys, testimony, and struggles for control of Harrison Industries. Perhaps it's because half of the board resigned when the SEC probe went public, or perhaps it's because Dr. Collins is constantly looking at his watch or Sam avoids eye contact, but the Harrison Industries boardroom is colder than I remember. Spreading papers across the gleaming table, Marcus Grant declares, the evidence is conclusive. The DNA test results were altered before they reached the lab. However, my client maintains that Mrs. Harrison was complicit in the financial irregularities. Adam's new attorney interrupts. I say, the signatures on these documents were forged, but even I sound insincere. I never? Can you demonstrate it? Because these trading records show otherwise, the attorney says, advancing further documents. During the relevant period, there were significant transfers to your personal account. Adam requested that I cease keeping an eye on our joint account because he had it handled, and my hands shake when I recognize the account numbers. Sam rises up suddenly and says, this is absurd. When McKenna approved these transactions, she was on maternity leave? The timestamps say otherwise. The lawyer's smirk is shark-like. The contingency plan has been compromised. Marcus Grant begins, his words tumbling like stones, while Dr. Collins clears his throat. Last night, someone gained access to Richard Harrison's secret files. Everything is gone. The room whirls, and I hold onto the edge of the table as the floor moves beneath me. That isn't feasible. The security procedures, the lawyer explains, almost empathetically, were bypassed using your credentials along with some very interesting emails about offshore accounts. My phone is buzzing, and Tara is sending me urgent updates. Speculation about the DNA test issue is growing on social media. News sites are reporting on fraud at all levels of Harrison Industries, and the business stock is plunging. I can explain, but Adam's attorney raises his hand. Save it for the SEC hearing. In the meantime, the board has called for an emergency vote of no confidence, given the circumstances, he says, standing up and arranging his papers. You can't, I cry, my throat clenched. My father-in-law dedicated his life to this business. He had faith in me. I recoil when I hear Adam's voice. He stands in the doorway, spotless even with his ankle monitor for home imprisonment. As if I trusted you not to tell Evelyn behind my back. Don't you dare. The board needs stability, he adds calmly. Someone with clean hands to bring it through this storm. Thankfully, I have a deal with the SEC that calls for complete cooperation in return for a lighter sentence. The falsified signatures, the corrupted data, and the meticulously crafted paper trail that leads directly to me all fit together. The understanding tastes like ash as I reply, you're going to pin everything on me. The fraud, the cover-up, all of it. I told Evelyn that. He twitches his left eyebrow. McKenna, you caused this to yourself. If you had only cooperated? Did you play along? I get up so fast that my chair falls over. You stole my daughter's inheritance, right? Richard built everything, but you ruined it all. Your daughter? His grin turns ruthless. Roughly. The results of the initial DNA test were really intriguing. The audience falls silent, and as Sam approaches Adam, security personnel intervene. I murmur. You're lying. But skepticism seeps in like poison. I think about all those late hours at work, the enigmatic business trips, and how he never wanted to talk about nursery colors or baby names. Am I? He takes out his phone and displays a lab result that I had never seen before. Do you want to know how these genetic markers work? Adam's attorney interrupts Dr. Collins before he can finish speaking. In light of the situation, my client is ready to request complete custody. When evaluating a person's suitability for parenthood, the court typically disapproves of fraud and embezzlement. I hear Emma's midnight sobs and morning laughter, see her face with her small fingers and dark curls, and feel the weight of her in my arms. The only thing that has seemed genuine since this nightmare started. The board votes in an hour. Adam replies quietly. So step down immediately. Give us your shares, and we might be able to set up supervised visits. I sway and Sam takes my arm. McKenna, don't. My vision is blurring though, and I'm already reaching for the resignation letter. Sometimes surrendering isn't about giving up. Sometimes it's about buying time to fight in a different way. Sam stands guard at the door while Tara works her magic on the computer, and Dr. Collins's office feels strange at midnight, with shadows creeping across his father's medical degrees and the steady hum of backup generators masking our footsteps. Found it, she murmurs. The original backup of the server. During the purge, Adam's crew didn't notice it. When I put in the flash drive Richard Harrison gave me years ago, his insurance policy, which I never imagined I'd need, my hands trembled. How much time? Tara's fingers dart across the keyboard as she says, if your father-in-law's passwords still work, it will take 10 minutes to decrypt. Adam stands with 2 security guards on either side of him, his ankle monitor glowing accusingly in the dark as the door slams wide. I knew you'd try something desperate. He straightens his handcuffs and enters. How about breaking and entering? That will appear awful during the custody hearing. Sam shifts between us. How did you discover? Adam's eyes do not meet his smile. Dr. Collins isn't as devoted as you believed. Everybody has a cost. Like the cost of Evelyn? Or was she just another stepping stone? The words have a harsh bite. For a moment, he loses his composure. You don't understand what's at stake. Tara whispers. 7 minutes, behind me. Adam narrows his gaze. It won't matter what you're attempting to recover. Tomorrow morning, the board will cast its vote. Your resignation has already been handled. As I watch the progress meter crawl, I remark. The funny thing about resignations is that they're not valid if they were signed under duress or if the person requesting them is engaging in fraud. He chuckles, but there's a hint of doubt. You can't prove anything. 5 minutes, replies Tara. Adam gives the guards a signal. Stop it. Now. Wait. I take a step forward and play my final card. The actual DNA is the outcome. Bring them to me. We've been through this. Either show me, or I'll send the SEC whatever we discover. Each and every email, each and every transaction, each time you meet with Marcus Grant. He twitches his left eyebrow. You're bluffing. 3 minutes, declares Tara. Sam stiffens, prepared to step in as the guards approach the computer. She's yours. Everyone is frozen in place by Adam's comments. The actual test, the DNA test. It demonstrates you own her. I needed leverage, so I changed the outcomes. I just sense clarity, even though the admission should be painful. In any case, you never desired her, did you? She was merely another resource to manage. 2 minutes. At last, Adam's facade breaks. You believe this has to do with a baby? Richard promised me authority and control when he appointed me CFO, and that's what this is all about. I whisper. He promised you a legacy, not a kingdom to steal. 1 minute. Adam jumps for the computer, but Sam stops him while Tara covers the screen. Amidst the confusion, a phone that I've never seen before falls out of Adam's pocket, and I quickly find the messages. Talks with Marcus Grant, plans to steal parts from Harrison Industries, and more, emails from Dr. Collins. With a triumphant "it's done," Tara declares, everything's decrypted. Adam becomes motionless. You don't want to open that file. However, I already am. The room is filled with the voice of Richard Harrison, who made a video confession only days before he died, naming people, outlining plans, and revealing one more surprise. Finally understanding, I tell Adam, Richard changed his will before he died. The company was never yours to steal. Emma was left in charge of his interest. Impossible, Adam, trembling, adds. She wasn't even born. I show him the will's date. Adam, he was aware. Almost everything, including the fraud, the affairs, and the agreements with Grant Technologies. You've been playing the exact game he anticipated the entire time. Adam's face twists in rage as he hears police sirens blaring in the background. You believe you've triumphed? The board, the proof, and your written confession are still with me. Sam whispers. Check your phone, the real one you just dropped. With the SEC reopening their investigation, Marcus Grant making agreements to save himself, Evelyn's father withdrawing all support, and Dr. Collins sending one more message, Adam's eyes widen as the communications pour in. Richard, I fulfilled my pledge. The heritage of your granddaughter is secure. Some wins aren't about winning. They're about defending what counts most. As Adam collapses, his empire of lies crumbling around him, the cops storm in, but I'm already leaving, thinking of Emma sleeping soundly at home. There are still remnants of yesterday night's pandemonium in the Harrison Industries boardroom. Evidence markers litter the conference table where Adam's business finally fell apart, police tape crosses the entryway, and Dr. Collins offers me a leather portfolio. The private documents of Richard Harrison. When the time was right, he wanted you to have these, he says softly. Beneath years of financial documents and business plans, I discover a letter inside. The paper is old, the ink is fading, but Richard's firm handwriting is still legible. My beloved McKenna, you'll see why I choose you to guard Emma's estate by now. That legacy isn't measured in stock prices or merger deals, not because you're Adam's wife, but because you saw what he couldn't. It is ingrained in decision-making moments, in choosing to defend instead of destroy. Emma fusses about her job. I shift her blanket, see my image in the darker windows, and I appear different in some way. Stronger, perhaps, or simply more confident. Sam shows up at the door. The SEC wants to review the video testimony again, and Evelyn Grant is here. When Evelyn walks in, I anticipate fury, but all I see in her eyes is tiredness. She says, Daddy is resigning. The board approved the dissolution of the merger attempt. She twists her now ringless fingers and rambles. The scandal. I told her, I never wanted this, and for the most part, it's true. Neither did I. Something softens in Emma's face as she looks at her. He also promised me children, you know? A future in which I genuinely had faith. I know, I responded. Because I did too, once. The doctor clears his throat. The new members of the board are ready. They will require guidance about the company's future. Richard's letter, decisions, and legacies come to mind. Inform them that we are reorganizing, beginning with the charitable foundation. Funding for programs that assist single parents should be doubled. From where she sits at the computer, already working on the press release, Tara smiles. We hear a commotion outside, and through the glass walls I see Adam being escorted out by federal officials, his flawless suit creased, his confidence mask finally shattered. He looks at me and begins to talk, but I turn away because some discussions aren't worth having. There's something else, Doctor. Collins says, holding out another envelope. Precise instructions regarding Emma's trust were left by your father-in-law. Money isn't the only factor. The grant is a challenge. Projects for community investment must equal every dollar. Finally comprehending, I chuckle. He ensured that the legacy would not be taken. It must be earned. Speaking of earning, Sam adds, the investigative piece just went live. The cost of truth and corporate corruption. However, in my opinion, karma in the boardroom sounded more fitting. As Emma falls asleep, I make the decision, no more karma, and no more retaliation either. Simply move forward. Dr. Collins' eyebrow goes up. What about Adam? We face justice through proper channels. Richard's portfolio is closed by me. I'm done playing his games. Evelyn gets up to go, but stops at the door. In my opinion, Richard made a wise decision. She nods to Emma, saying, not just for the company, but for her. When she leaves, I proceed to Richard's former office, where his nameplate still hangs on the door. It will soon read Harrison Industries Trust Management, and his presence permeates every thoughtfully chosen element. I discover a final message, dated the day of his death, tucked inside his desk calendar. Remember, knowing when to fight isn't what gives you power. Knowing when to stop is the key. I take Emma and inhale that lovely baby aroma as she wakes up, wanting attention with her father's determination but mercifully without any of his calculation. Are you prepared to return home? From the doorway, Sam asks. I corrected him, gathered our belongings, and said, not home. Forward. We bring lawyers, restructuring plans, and 1,000 decisions concerning Emma's future tomorrow, as reporters outside wait with questions about scandal and redemption. But now, in this silent triumph, I realize what Richard had known all along. Sometimes the best form of retaliation isn't demolishing what others have created, but rather creating something better out of the ashes they left behind.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.
My own family organized an intervention to disown me for the sake of the family. Sadly, they were unaware of the covert business I owned. Hello everyone. Before we begin, a small favor? If you love this type of work, please subscribe. It's free, helps the channel, and ensures you never miss out on great videos. Okay, let's get started. Let me set the scene. My name is Alex, and I've always been referred to as the black sheep of my family. My family is all about appearance. We're talking about an entire clan that is completely infatuated with flashy objects. My parents own a network of jewelry stores where wealthy individuals may spend a year's rent on something they'll only wear twice. Jewelry is more than simply a business for them. It is a part of their personality. Apparently, I am the flaw that tarnishes their flawless image. It's not like I'm a slacker who spends his days playing video games in the basement. Far from it. I own a business that designs and customizes high-end bikes. I'm not referring to the kind you acquire in a sports goods store. These are handcrafted, elegant machines with incredible attention to detail, bikes that are more expensive than some cars. My clientele? CEOs, celebrities, and collectors seeking something one of a kind. But here's the thing, I keep a fairly low profile. I do not drive flashy automobiles or wear expensive watches. My workshop isn't in a flashy office park. It's in an old industrial building that I purchased outright. My company is small, only a few individuals I trust, and we produce bikes with a 6-month waitlist. My family? They are not aware of any of this. To them, I'm just the guy who prioritized his hobby over the family business. Growing up, my parents made it apparent that they prioritized achievement, money, and maintaining appearances. My older brother Ethan was groomed to take over the jewelry empire. He has the firstborn golden child idea down to a science. My sister, Vanessa, is their pride and delight since she married into money. And then there's Daniel, the family baby who can't do anything wrong, despite the fact that he lives off the family name. I guess I was doomed from the beginning. I did not want what they wanted. They enjoyed the limelight, the continual desire to network, and the pressure to project the picture of a perfect family. I despised it. When I was younger, I'd sneak away from their silly galas and charity dinners to tinker with everything I could get my hands on. Broken radios, old motorcycles, anything mechanical. That is how I discovered my passion. As I grew older, it became clear that I did not fit in. My parents wanted me to join the family business, but I couldn't think of anything worse. Selling jewelry to people who value money over quality? No, thanks. I wanted to build something with a meaning. After college, which they only paid for because they expected me to come to my senses, I began working on my bike designs. At first, it was just me in my garage, but the demand quickly rose. I invested everything I had in the business, time, energy, and money, and it paid off. My ideas began to gain traction, and I soon had clients eager to pay exorbitant fees for my work. Here's where it gets funny. My family knows I'm self-employed, yet they believe I'm barely getting by. They are unaware of my achievement since I do not brag about it. I drive a regular automobile, dress regularly, and avoid their small networking events like the plague. They see my modest lifestyle as proof that I failed. The truth is that I outperform all of them combined. My business has reached 7 figures. I have collaborations with major brands, a class that has been scheduled for months, and a reputation that is spreading worldwide. But none of that matters to them because, in their opinion, success isn't real unless it's on your wrist or parked in the driveway. The protocol is the same every time I visit them. Ethan brags about his latest strategic partnership, which is really a fancy way of stating he inked a deal set up by his father. Vanessa hints about her glamorous life, which primarily entails being a socialite. Daniel behaves like a frat dude who has never outgrown his college glory days. And me? I receive nice phony smiles and passive-aggressive comments about my potential. Are you still working on those bikes? Dad asks with a disappointed tone. Yeah, I'll reply, keeping things brief because there's no use in explaining myself. Vanessa once asked me directly if I needed help obtaining a real job. I chuckled and told her I was fine, but she gave me a look as if she had just done me a favor by proposing it. The worst aspect is that they never ask about my business. Not really. They think it's just a phase I'll go through, as if I'm a naive adolescent. It's offensive, but also sort of funny. They're so caught up in their own world, so persuaded that their way is the only way, that they don't notice what's in front of them. I kept my success to myself for a reason. I'm not hiding it. I simply don't feel the need to prove anything. My work speaks for itself, and those who matter understand the reality. My clients value what I do, my staff is fantastic, and I've created something that I'm truly proud of. I don't need their affirmation or approval, but the truth is that they aren't content to let me live my life. They've been dropping hints and subtle statements about how my actions affect the family. Not being involved in the jewelry business appears to be a form of betrayal. They act as if I owe them something, as if I'm failing to meet their expectations by not following along. Ethan cornered me at one of Mom's dinner gatherings and began lecturing me on family legacy. He literally said, "You're either with us or against us." I nearly choked on my drink. Against you? Dude, I am just trying to live my life. And then, here we are, a brief and quick text from Dad. Family meeting, 8 p.m., be there? So I went to the family meeting expecting a lecture, maybe even a fight. I was unprepared for the circus that awaited me. I could feel the tension in the air from the moment I came in. It was like walking onto a stage with the screenplay fully written and I was the only one who hadn't read it. My father answered the door and gave me a disapproving once-over, as if he was already upset by my existence. He did not even say hi. Instead, he simply mumbled, "You're late," and moved aside to allow me in. For context, my father defines late as anything less than 10 minutes early. So, while I was technically on time, he thought I was an hour late. I didn't bother arguing. There was no point. I just shrugged and stepped inside. The house looked precisely the same as it always did. Immaculate, expensive and soulless. Everything in it screamed, "Look how much money we have," from the huge crystal chandelier in the entrance to the immaculately set living room that nobody ever used. It was all simply a big spectacle. And speaking of the living room, that's where everyone was assembled, arranged in a beautiful little semicircle as if they were holding a press conference. Ethan stood on one side, dressed in his regular business casual attire, as if he had just returned from a board meeting. Vanessa was sitting next to him, browsing through her phone and probably appearing to be busy. Daniel was splayed out on a chair, as if he didn't care about anything, but I knew he was enjoying whatever drama was going to develop. Then there was my mother, sitting off to the side like a worried referee, wringing her hands and giving me that tight smile she always gave when things were about to get awkward. Of course, there was my assigned chair, a single lonely seat positioned deliberately in the center of the room, facing everyone. It was so clear that this was an ambush that I nearly laughed. Almost. Dad did not waste any time. As soon as I sat down, he began his speech, emphasizing the value of family unity and heritage preservation. It was all extremely official and rehearsed. At one point, Ethan weighed in with phrases like long-term strategy and brand image, which made me roll my eyes so hard I feared they would get stuck. Vanessa wasn't far behind, commenting on how my decisions were troublesome and how they impacted on the family as a whole. She continued using terms like reputation and status, as if these were the only things that mattered. Daniel didn't say much, and he didn't need to. He was simply sitting there smirking, as if he were watching his favorite television show. I didn't say anything. I simply listened to them, nodding occasionally to give the impression that I was paying attention. To be honest, it was intriguing to see how much effort they had put into the entire process. They truly believed they were conducting some sort of intervention, rescuing me from a life of failure and shame. Finally, Vanessa handed me a folder. She slid it across the coffee table, as if she were presenting me with some sacred document. "This is for the good of the family," she remarked, her tone condescending. I opened the folder and realized how far they were willing to go. Inside were legal papers that were carefully ordered and filled with jargon I did not need a lawyer to comprehend. The gist was simple. They were cutting me off. No inheritance, no ties to the family business, and no connection to the family name. For a second, I just stared at the papers, not because I was surprised, I could see this coming from a mile away, but because it was ridiculous how serious they were taking this. They truly believed this was some sort of retribution. Dad leaned forward, his voice serious and forceful. This isn't personal, Alex, it's about business. Your actions have consequences. I raised an eyebrow. My actions? You've made choices that don't align with the family's values, Ethan stated, as if reading from a script. Vanessa nodded. It's not just about you, Alex, it's about all of us. We have to protect the family name. I wanted to laugh but didn't. Instead, I glanced through the documents, appearing to read them thoroughly. Their eyes were fixed on me the entire time, waiting for my reaction. Finally, I looked up and asked, "Where do I sign?" The room went completely silent. I don't think they expected that. My mother was the first to break the stillness. "Alex, wait, don't you think you should?" "Nope," I replied, cutting her off. "This is exactly what you want, right? To cut me loose? Let's get it over with." Vanessa blinked, apparently taken aback. "It's not about cutting you loose, it's about setting boundaries." "Boundaries," I said, smirking. "Sure, let's call it that." Dad motioned to the bottom of the page. "Just sign there." So, I did. I took the pen, scribbled my name at the bottom, and returned the folder to Vanessa. She appeared unsure whether she was relieved or irritated. "Is that all?" I inquired, straightening up. Dad frowned. "This isn't a joke, Alex. One day, you'll understand that this was necessary." I nodded, having already gotten halfway to the door. "Yeah, I'll be sure to send you a thank you card when that day comes." As I went away, I could feel their gaze on my back, but I didn't glance back. They believed they were making a statement, but all they did was prove what I already knew. They did not understand me, and they never will. When I returned to my workshop that night, I felt neither upset nor defeated. Honestly, I was relieved. That family meeting was simply confirmation of something I'd known for years. I was not one of them. They had no notion who I was or what I had built, and they had no desire to find out. I turned on the lights in my workshop, and the hum of the fluorescent lamps was more soothing than anything I'd felt while sitting in that over-decorated house. The place was my sanctuary, with walls lined with tools, shelves packed with bespoke components, and rows of partially completed motorcycles waiting for me to finish them. It was entirely mine, created with my own two hands. My helper, Ben, was still there, working on some late orders. He looked up when I stepped in. "Hey, how'd it go?" he inquired, wiping his hands on a shop rag. "They disowned me," I nonchalantly stated, laying my bag on the workbench. Ben blinked. "Wait, like officially?" "Yep," I answered, taking a half-finished frame from the rack and scrutinizing its welds. "Signed the papers and everything. I'm no longer part of the family." He let out a low whistle. "Damn, you okay?" I shrugged. "Honestly? Yeah. They think they cut me off, but I'm the one who's been carrying them emotionally for years. They did me a favor." We worked in silence for a while, with the only sounds being the buzz of tools and the odd clang of metal. It was peaceful, the kind of peace I had never experienced with my family. A few hours later, I logged onto my business dashboard, and the results made me happy. Orders had skyrocketed. One of our latest designs had become popular in a niche cycling community, and suddenly people were literally throwing money at us. Custom orders, bulk sales from international clients, and even queries from a couple of well-known brands looking to cooperate. It was overwhelming, but in the greatest way. My inbox was swamped with emails, and while the majority were business-related, a couple stuck out. One was from a journalist who wanted to write a piece about me for a lifestyle magazine. Another came from a professional rider who needed a custom bike for their next competition. Then there was the one that gave me pause. A private client offering an insane sum of money for a one-of-a-kind design. I slumped back in my chair, laughing. My family believed I was wasting my life experimenting with bikes, yet it was more profitable than their jewelry business. The truth is, I never cared about money. Don't get me wrong, it's good to be financially secure and not have to worry about bills or debt, but that wasn't the reason I started this. I started it because I like it and wanted to make something with my hands that was both utilitarian and beautiful, something meaningful. What about the money? That was a pleasant bonus. The nicest thing was that it allowed me to keep growing without compromise. I didn't have to answer to anyone, not investors, shareholders, or my family. The following morning, I met with Josh, my business partner, at our favorite diner. Josh is the type of person who is constantly 10 steps ahead of everyone else. He is the reason we have been able to grow the firm so swiftly. All right, he murmured, sliding into the booth across from me. What is the plan? For what? I asked as I sipped my coffee. For dealing with your family, he explained. They'll come crawling back eventually. Do you know that? I shrugged. Allow them, I'm not going to spend my time worrying about them. I have more important things to focus on. Josh smirked. Fair enough. Speaking of broader matters, we need to discuss this. He took out his laptop and showed me an email from one of our vendors. They had offered us an exclusive price on some new materials, but we'd have to commit to a larger manufacturing run than usual. Can we manage it? I asked. Easily, Josh replied. With the orders flowing in, we could treble our output while still having room to breathe. This is an obvious choice. Do it, I instructed. Josh grinned. Done. Things improved over the course of several weeks. The magazine feature debuted, and it was a game changer. The journalist produced a wonderful article about how I transformed a passion for motorcycles into a thriving business, complete with images of our workshop and some of our most popular designs. The answer was crazy. Orders increased overnight, and our social media platforms were flooded with new fans. We had to hire 2 more individuals merely to meet the demand. Ben, who had been with me since the garage days, began teaching the new hires while I focused on developing our next major project. It was exhausting, but in the greatest possible manner. Every now and then, I would think about my family, not in a sad or nostalgic sense, but rather with interest. I wondered if they had read the article or heard about the company. Part of me wanted to tell them simply to see how they reacted, but another part of me wasn't concerned. I was too preoccupied with creating something real, something they would never understand. One day, I received a call from a firm that manufactured high-end outdoor gear. They wanted to collaborate on a limited edition bike for their upcoming product range. It was the type of collaboration that could propel us to the next level, and I couldn't say yes quick enough. Josh and I spent weeks ironing out the details, working late nights to ensure that everything was flawless. By the time the prototypes were completed, I knew we had something unique. The launch was tremendously successful. The bikes sold out in hours, and the hype surrounding the cooperation propelled us to new heights. Suddenly, we were no longer a modest niche business, we were a brand. And during it all, my family remained mute. No call, no text, nothing. I wasn't sure if they were ignoring me or just didn't understand what I was doing. It didn't matter. Their silence did not last long, however. It began with a text. We need to talk. Urgent family matters. Vanessa was the first to break the stillness, as I expected. My siblings were predictable in that regard. She enjoyed being the mediator when things got tense, but her vision of peace usually entailed ensuring that everyone regarded her as the voice of reason. I ignored it. Then came another one, this time from Ethan. Alex, let's meet. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I laughed out loud. Is there a misunderstanding? The same guy who sat there with his impeccable posture, watching me sign away my fortune, suddenly thought we had a slight misunderstanding? Yes, sure, I did not respond to him either. The texts kept coming in over the next 2 days, each one more urgent than the last. Daniel's finally arrived, but he was just as sluggish as he was. Yo, you around? Stuff's happening. Very lyrical, that one. But the one that made me pause was from my father. Come home, we need you. That's when I realized things had changed. Dad didn't ask for anything, he ordered, expected, and demanded. Come home was the closest he'd ever come to pleading. At first, I was unsure whether I wanted to answer. A part of me wanted to see how far they would go. But another part of me knew things would inevitably escalate. It was not in their habit to let things go. They required control, and I wasn't following their rules anymore. A week later, as Josh and I were at the workshop, I received a call from an unknown number. Hello Alex, a familiar voice said, sounding unnecessarily polite. It was Ethan? We need to talk. I rolled my eyes. I got your texts. What do you want? He paused for a second, revealing everything I needed to know. It's about the family business. Ah, there it was? The family company, of course. We're having some challenges, he said, and I could almost hear the pain in his voice as he said it. It's not a great time for us, and we think you could help. I could help? I inquired, leaning back in my chair and smiled. That's interesting. Last time we talked, I was an embarrassment to the family. My choices didn't align with your values, remember? Alex, Ethan murmured, changing into his favorite condescending elder brother voice. Let's not dwell on the past. This is bigger than all of us. I laughed. No, it's not. It's about you, Ethan, and Vanessa, and Dad, and the fact that none of you have any idea how to adapt to a world that's moving faster than you are. He attempted to push back, but I cut him off. I'm busy, Ethan. If the business is struggling, maybe you should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't good enough to be part of the family. I hung up before he could reply. That was satisfactory. Vanessa made her next move a few days later, when she unexpectedly arrived at my workshop. I was in the process of fine-tuning a bespoke build for a new client when I noticed her car pull into the parking lot. She stepped out in her luxury heels and sunglasses, as if she were walking into a nice boutique, not one where grease and metal were the major decor. I met her at the door, not trying to hide my irritation. What are you doing here? She flashed me one of her excessively polished smiles. Alex, we need to talk. I'm working, I explained, crossing my arms. This won't take long, she said, moving past me into the workshop. She looked around, evidently displeased with the ordered mess. So this is what you've been doing? Bikes? Yep, I replied, not giving anything else. She groaned and turned to face me. Look, things aren't great right now. The business is struggling, and Dad's not handling it well. Ethan's trying to hold things together, but... She trailed off, waiting for me to intervene and save the day. I did not. Finally, she stated, We need you, Alex. Those comments affected her in a different way than she expected. For years I'd been rejected as the one who didn't measure up. And now? They now needed me. What exactly do you think I can do? I inquired, leaning against one of the workbenches. You've always been good with creative ideas, she added, her tone a touch too sweet. And you've clearly been doing okay for yourself here. Okay? I asked, raising an eyebrow. She flinched, realizing her error. I didn't mean it like that. We're in trouble, Alex. The market's changing, and we didn't adapt fast enough. Sales are down, and Dad's, well, he's too proud to admit we need help. But Ethan and I think you could bring something new to the table. I stared at her for a long time, letting her words linger in the air. This was Vanessa, the same person who used to mock my small project and once told me I was squandering my talent. And now she was asking for my assistance. It felt nice. Let me get this straight, I finally remarked. You want me to come back and fix the business after everything you guys pulled? She nodded. We made mistakes, I'll admit that, but we're trying to make things right. I inclined my head, appearing to think about it. Yeah, no. I'm good. Vanessa's face fell. Alex, please. This isn't just about us. It's about the legacy. Your legacy, I corrected her. Not mine. I already have something I'm proud of, and it doesn't involve begging people to buy overpriced necklaces. Her immaculate mask slipped for a second, and I saw a glimpse of frustration. But before she could say anything else, I unlocked the door and motioned for her to exit. Have a nice day, Vanessa. Then, a week later, Dad arrived at the workshop, looking more exhausted and worn out than I had ever seen him. He didn't even bother with politeness. We need to talk, he remarked quietly and seriously. I leaned against the doorframe and crossed my arms. Do we, though? He groaned and ran his fingers through his graying hair. Alex, I'll admit it, we were wrong about you. About everything. The business is failing. I can't fix it. Your brother can't fix it. We need your help. I stared at him for a long time, allowing the weight of his words to settle in. This was the man who had always preached about pride and reputation, and now he was virtually pleading for my help. I'll think about it, I finally answered, moving aside to let him enter. And that's when I understood the tables had completely turned. When I promised my father I'd think about it, I didn't intend to let them off the hook. If they wanted me to salvage the family business, they'd have to work for it. For the first time in their lives, they needed to know what it was like to not have all the cards. Over the next few days, I let them stew. There are no calls, texts, or anything. I wasn't ignoring them for petty reasons. Okay, maybe only a little. I wanted them to recognize that they were no longer in control. They disowned me like it was nothing, and now they're circling back, trying to bring me on board. I wasn't going to make things simple. Josh, of course, found the whole thing amusing. So let me get this straight, he began, leaning on the workbench as I adjusted a frame. They need you to preserve their business, but they haven't apologized, and they certainly haven't admitted how badly they messed up. Pretty much, I replied, smirking. And you just let them twist in the wind? I shrugged. Feels fair. Josh laughed. I wish I had your patience. I'd be sticking it in their faces every chance I had. Oh, don't worry, I said. They'll get what's coming, but it's not going to be on their terms. A few days later, Vanessa called again. This time, I picked up. Alex, she exclaimed, sounding too joyful. Thank you for finally responding. I was beginning to suspect you were avoiding us. I snubbed the bait. What do you want? She paused, and I could tell she was trying to figure out how to word the plea she was about to make. I wanted to check in, see if you've given any more thought to, helping out with the family business. I have thought about it, I said. And I have a few conditions. She was silent for a moment. Okay, what types of conditions? I want full control, I murmured, relishing the moment. Here's the plan. I'll take over the business. You will continue to work as employees, with no titles or power. You will respond to me. Vanessa almost choked. Wait, complete control? Alex, that is not negotiable. I shut her off. If you don't like it, find someone else to fix your mess. She stuttered, trying to argue, but I stood strong. She eventually promised to talk to Dad and Ethan and get back to me. My dad returned to the workshop the following day. He appeared more put together this time, but the despair in his eyes was still evident. Vanessa told me about your conditions, he began as soon as he got in. He exhaled. That's a hefty ask, Alex. You're asking us to hand over the firm your mother and I started from the ground up. I leaned on the workbench, crossing my arms. No, I'm asking you to hand over the company that is failing because none of you understand how to change. If you want me to save it, you must let me do it my way. Otherwise, what is the point? He said nothing. For a long time, I could see the inner conflict on his face. Eventually, he nodded. Fine, you can have full control, but there's one condition, he told me. Here we go, I mumbled. I want you to keep the family name attached to the business, he told me. That's all we have left. I thought about it for a bit. It wasn't an outrageous request, and to be honest, I didn't care about the name either way. Deal, I said. The real fun began after the family reluctantly agreed to let me take complete control. I did not waste any time diving in. If they expected this to be a slow, peaceful transition in which they could dispute or second-guess my actions, they were mistaken. This was not a democracy. It was a dictatorship, and I was in charge. The first thing I did after taking over was demolish their beloved hierarchy. Ethan had been conducting operations as if he were auditioning for a reality show about dumb executives. His concept of leadership involved shouting at people when things went wrong and claiming credit when things went right. That was not going to fly. I called a staff meeting in the main office. All managers, department heads, and key personnel were invited. My family also showed up, but they seemed uneasy, sitting off to the side like school children waiting for the principal to scold them. All right, I said, standing at the head of the meeting table. Let us get one thing straight. The previous manner of doing things is obsolete. This company will now be driven by outcomes rather than nepotism. A few others looked anxiously at Ethan, who was staring at me as if I had insulted his entire being. I pointed to the whiteboard behind me, where I had outlined a clear strategy. We are streamlining everything. No more bloated budgets, superfluous overhead, or out-of-date practices. I am interested in hearing your views. If you've been buried beneath layers of bureaucracy, that ends now. This is your moment to show what you are capable of. One of the managers raised their hand. And how about the family? I smirked. They will be held to the same standard as everyone else. No exceptions. Ethan scoffed, but I ignored him. Vanessa appeared to want to burrow beneath the table, while Daniel was half asleep. Classic. I then tackled the stores. Half of them were losing money because they had not been updated in decades. The exhibits were worn, the layouts were unclear, and the employees appeared to be just waiting for someone to put them out of their misery. I instantly shut down the locations with the lowest performance. Some employees were disgruntled, which I understood, but I made sure to provide severance compensation and job placement aid. This was not about punishing somebody, it was about saving the organization. The remaining stores received a comprehensive renovation. I hired designers to remodel the premises, transforming them into clean, minimalist showrooms that focused on products rather than gimmicky sales practices. I also implemented a new inventory system, making it easier for customers to browse and buy, whether in store or online. Speaking of online, this was another key area where the corporation had struggled. Their website appeared to be trapped in 2005, complete with clumsy navigation and fuzzy photos. I scrapped it all and hired a team of developers to create a new website from scratch. It was quick, easy to use, and smartphone optimized. Within weeks of launch, internet sales surged. Then came the product line. This was where I truly put my mark on things. For years, the company produced the same old designs, gaudy, costly jewelry aimed at an older audience. It was okay for the older set, but it utterly ignored younger customers seeking something new and current. I launched a new line centered on minimalist, ecological designs. Consider exquisite items crafted from recycled materials, with an emphasis on craftsmanship and storytelling. Each piece included a card explaining where the materials came from and how they were recycled. It was a hit. People appreciated the concept of owning something unique that didn't harm the environment. Vanessa first despised the idea. She claimed that it was too hazardous and did not meet our clients' expectations. But after the numbers started flooding in, she had to concede I was correct. Of course, not everything went well. I had to deal with a lot of criticism, especially from my own family. Ethan, in particular, seems determined to undercut me at every opportunity. He'd pull me aside after meetings and say things like, "Are you certain this is the best decision? I mean, you're new to this level of management?" I'd just smile and say, "You're welcome to step down if you believe you can't handle the changes." That typically silenced him. And Daniel? Honestly, I had no idea what he was doing half the time. He'd arrive at meetings late, if at all, and offer nothing. I eventually assigned him a tiny responsibility maintaining the company's social media profiles, which kept him busy enough without inflicting any significant damage. Despite the hurdles, the outcomes spoke for themselves. Within 6 months, the company was unrecognizable, in a positive sense. Sales were up across the board, the new product lines were receiving fantastic reviews, and we'd even begun to attract younger, more tech-savvy clients. What is the best part? My family was beginning to sense a power shift. They had spent their entire lives at the top of the food chain, but now they were just like any other employee. They responded to me. One day, I arranged a meeting for just the 4 of us. Myself, Dad, Ethan, and Vanessa. I wanted to make sure they knew exactly where we stood. "Let me be clear," I stated, leaning back in my chair. "I now own this corporation. If you decide to stay, you will do things my way. If you don't like it, there's the door." Dad grimaced, but said nothing. Ethan appeared to want to argue, but Vanessa placed a hand on his arm and shook her head. "I'm serious," I added. "I'm not here to continue the family legacy. I'm here to make something better. If that requires letting go of the past, so be it." For once, nobody had anything to say. The turning point came when one of the industry's largest trade exhibitions encouraged us to present the new collection. It was the type of event that could make or destroy a company's reputation, and I was determined to leave an impression. I designed the booth myself, providing a sleek, immersive experience that emphasized the company's sustainable innovations while also telling the tale of its transformation. My family was present, of course, but this time I was the star of the show. Customers, journalists, and industry experts rushed to our exhibit, admiring the new approach and questioning how we'd turned things around so rapidly. I made every effort to give credit where it was due, particularly to the staff who had worked tirelessly to make it happen. As I saw people admire the pieces I helped make, I felt a surge of pride that I had never felt before. This wasn't just about preserving a business, it was about showing to myself, and to them, that I was capable of far more than they had previously given me credit for. By the end of the show, we had secured several new collaborations, and the brand was more popular than ever. My family was finally realizing that I wasn't just the black sheep anymore, I was leading the charge. Then one day, it occurred. This was the moment I had been waiting for. We had just finished a quarterly review meeting, and I had delivered some of the best data the company had ever seen. My father cleared his throat just as I was about to finish the lecture. "Alex," he whispered, his voice as gentle as I had ever heard it, "I just wanted to say how proud I am of you. You have accomplished something that none of us could have done. You did more than just salvage the business, you improved it." The room became silent. Even Ethan and Vanessa appeared astonished. "Thanks," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Vanessa joined in. "Dad is right, we should have seen your potential sooner. You've taken this company to places we never imagined possible." Ethan nodded, grudgingly. "You proved everyone incorrect." I can admit that. It was weird to hear them admit it out loud. "We've been talking," Dad said, looking at the others. "We'd like to fix things, not just the business, but us, the family." There it was, the apology and the olive branch. I sat back in my chair, allowing their comments to hang in the air for a minute. "I appreciate that," I said. "But let's be honest, you didn't want me in the family until I proved useful. That is not something I can forget. Vanessa looked down, obviously uncomfortable, but she did not object. I'm not interested in pretending things are fine. Our current system is functional. We're working together, and that's it. I don't need anything else. Ethan frowned. Come on, Alex, we are family. We made mistakes, but we're striving to make things right. You're trying to make it right because you have no choice, I responded calmly. If this firm had failed, you would not be here today. Let us not change history. Dad seemed to want to argue, but then sighed and nodded. Fair enough. Here's the deal, I explained, rising up and gathering my notes. I will remain operating the firm, and you will continue to do your tasks, but aside from that, we're okay where we are. No more pretending to have a happy family. We tried that, but it didn't work. When I left the meeting, the room was quiet, but I didn't feel awful about it. I wasn't angry, nor was I resentful. I knew exactly where I stood, and I was not going to let them cross that line again.